Chapter 234. Behind Ingjuren, Triflower silently retreated into the shadows and did not say a word. Ingjuren forced a smile on his face. He held his breath and said with difficulty, "I didn't hear anything I shouldn't have. Mr. Lu, you're thinking too much. The storm is so heavy right now, I'm worried about my brothers. I want to go to the backyard to take a look." "That's human nature," Lu Laodao said. "Then go." Ingjuren was slightly stunned. He didn't expect this person to let him go so easily, but wasn't he worried that he would slip away? But after thinking about it, he felt relieved. Mrs. Sanhua was also very mysterious compared to him. But in front of this old man, she was obedient and didn't dare to leave. How could he escape? He took a deep breath and stood up with his saber. He wanted to go to the back to see if those people were okay, and he also wanted to look at the surrounding terrain. Although Mrs. Sanhua said that he couldn't escape from here, he couldn't be at ease without trying many things himself. However, just as he took 2 or 3 steps away, Lu Laodao seemed to suddenly remember something and said casually, "There's one more thing I just wanted to ask." Hero Ing said that he once saw an old man in the illusion of the Pearl Country. That old man also said something to Hero Ing. What was it? If it was an ordinary person, he wouldn't be able to remember it clearly. But the thing about the old man seemed to be deeply engraved in his mind, and he couldn't forget it even if he wanted to. So after a moment of hesitation, he said in a low voice, "Mr. Lu, why are you asking this?" That thing was very strange. Lu Gongzan was very strange. A strange person asking about a strange thing was even more strange. Lu Laodao just smiled. "I'm just curious. If Hero Ing doesn't want to say it, then don't say it." Ingjuren really didn't want to say it. But if he didn't say it, he wouldn't be able to figure it out. Although it had only been a short day, the words that the old man had left him felt like they had been stuck in his head for more than 10 years. He was so frustrated that he wanted to bang his head against the wall. Because of this thought, he finally couldn't help but say those words word for word. He also wanted to see how Lu Laodao would react after hearing those words. The people of the Pearl Kingdom suffered from the invasion of the Tufeng Kingdom, but they didn't think about how to expel those people. Instead, they accepted their fate. Now that someone was knocking on their door, they wanted to rise up and fight back. Unfortunately, they were also a mess. It was hard to tell who was a friend and who was a foe, so he could only set up a target for himself. How laughable and pitiful. After Ingjuren finished, he paused for a while and let out a sigh. That's what that person said. He was looking forward to Lu Laodao's reaction. But the result was disappointing. It seemed that Lu Laodao was really just asking casually. When Ingjuren said the first few words, he listened attentively, but he didn't pay much attention to the latter part. Instead, he picked up the ladle in the earthen pot and scooped at the bottom. When he scooped up the minced meat, he put it into his mouth and smacked it. He seemed to be enjoying it very much. When Ingjuren finished speaking and vented his anger, he raised his head. "Do you know what meat this is?" Ingjuren shook his head in confusion. "It's big. It's the meat of a big human. It doesn't need any seasoning to be tender and delicious. It's really the best taste in the world," Lu Laodao said with a smile. "You didn't eat it, but you let that greedy Sanhua have it." These words exploded in Ingjuren's ears like a clap of thunder. He couldn't act anymore. If he continued to deceive himself in this kind of situation, he would just be a plaything for the strong. He simply held his knife horizontally and retreated to the door. The wind and rain outside the door instantly drenched his back. The cold wind blew at the back of his neck, as if he was going to be beheaded at any time. Ingjuren circulated his internal energy and shouted, "Who are you?" Lu Laodao looked at Ingjuren, then looked at Sanhua and laughed. "You little thing, you're really unexpected. But if I think about it carefully, it makes sense. Since you remember and haven't forgotten, you should have said it earlier. You're just a demon. What kind of schemes are you playing?" His laughter sounded very scary against the sound of the wind and rain. But after laughing for a while, he sighed. "I don't have any bad intentions. You kids are loyal to that Li Yunxin, and this Lao Dao is also loyal. I haven't experienced such kindness for a long time, so I'm reluctant to leave. But there's also the matter of that child." Lu Laodao pointed at the body of Ling Kongzi on the east side of the room. This Lu Laodao treats Li Yunxin with both love and loyalty. As for his lover, Shirquizi, it's the love between a man and a woman in the world. The rest of you are trapped in a place like this. The emotions in your hearts are stronger than usual. These emotions, whether sad or happy, are used to shape the tribulation body of the 6 desires. Ingjuren was confused. He went to look at Sanhua. Just as he expected, Sanhua shrank in the corner, blinking her eyes as if she was extremely afraid. He was at his wit's end and could only listen to Lu Laodao. "Do you know what your body is?" Lu Laodao pointed at Ing Juren. But he didn't care if Ing Juren answered him. He continued. Your body, flesh and soul. What is the soul? To put it bluntly, it's just the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Mortals are afraid of death because if the body is destroyed, the soul will be destroyed as well, turning into a lonely soul and wild ghost. But for cultivators, although there aren't many ways to shape the body, there are still quite a few. The art of possession, the art of possession, the art of puppetry. Cultivators cultivate to refine their body and soul so that they can live as long as the sun and the moon. How can they not study how to shape the body? But for cultivators, it's easy to shape the body, but how can the soul return to the body? You have to know that part of the soul and the body are overlapping. When the body is built, the soul can't be attached. If the body is not built, the soul can't be attached. Tell me, what should we do? Lu Laodao. These words were easy to understand, even Ing Juren gradually understood. Now that this person asked him again, he didn't know why, but he answered as if he was possessed by ghosts and gods. The method is simple, just like the weaver, black and white threads weave together, won't it work? Lu Laodao laughed. His laughter echoed in the hall, and the air that came out of his mouth even made the huge bonfire flicker. Yes. While building the body, can't we weave the soul into it? But there's one more thing. Cultivators have to go through all kinds of tribulations and cut off all kinds of emotions at the beginning of cultivation. The soul itself is the collection of the 7 emotions and 6 desires. The soul of a cultivator is actually incomplete. The souls of mortals like you are colorful. But when cultivators are alive, they have slowly removed and suppressed their emotions. Look at their souls again, it's faded, leaving a lot of empty space. What do you use to fill the empty space? Find the Tao heart and fill it with the Tao heart. If you can't find it, fill it with spiritual energy first. So you have to weave their souls back into their bodies, but you can't even find the thread, so how do you weave it? You have to find the 7 emotions and 6 desires and weave it again. But in this turbulent world, whether it's humans or birds or beasts, they all have their own place. Laodao nodded at Ing Juren. For example, you were born in this world, and when you die and turn into a pile of mud and ashes, are you still in this world? Of course you are. It's just that when you are alive, you occupy an empty space in this world, and when you die, this empty space will collapse and turn into more small empty spaces. Then, these small empty spaces of yours and the small empty spaces of others will come together and become a new empty space. A new person will come into this world. When Lu Laodao said this, he seemed to be very proud of his idea. He stood up, stroked his beard, and paced a few steps. The wind that he brought with him whistled in the hall, as if he was a huge bellows, constantly blowing air in all directions. So this world in essence is empty. It's made up of countless empty spaces. You, me, this grass, the bricks, and even this flame, in the end we are all the same thing. These empty spaces in the world are not many and not few. If one is added here, there must be one less there. Now, I want to use the 7 emotions and 6 desires to weave the soul into the body, which is to use those small empty spaces to weave a big empty space for people to live. It's just that there are big and small empty spaces everywhere in this world, and when I weave her, those empty spaces will float in like flying ashes. How can this work? Tell me again, what should I do? After that, Ing Juren didn't understand these words. But he still heard something like, dust. He was annoyed, not knowing what this old man was going to do after saying these words, so he didn't have the mood to think carefully. Can't we just find a place where there isn't any flying dust? He asked. Lu Laodao waved his big sleeves and his eyebrows danced. Yes. Find a place with no empty space, and then weave the soul back with the 7 emotions and 6 desires of this world. But where can I find an empty space that can accommodate one person? Lu Laodao laughed. A person can't do it. A person's empty space is too small. If you want a big empty space, you can only go to those big livestock. Run into the empty space of the big livestock. It's clean inside. Except for those on your body, there are no impurities. As he spoke, he looked around and finally walked to the side of Ling Kongzi's bloody body. I used your love goo to weave this tribulation body of 6 desires for her. It's growing now. Speaking of which, I found it strange a few days ago. It was originally growing well. Why did the heart aperture grow so fast? Look at this bloodline. He reached out and flicked the blood vessels on the surface of the body. This bloodline's heart aperture has already taken shape. But now I know. So it's because of you, little thing. He turned to look at Mrs. Sanhua. You know a lot of things in your heart, but you don't say them. You made wild guesses in your heart, and as a result, her heart aperture grew fast. If I didn't know about it today, this body might have failed at the last step. What do you have to compensate me? Sanhua didn't say anything and only hid a little further away. Seeing her like this, Lu Laodao sighed. Forget it. It was a good thing, but it scared you. Now that you all know the whole story, you all have your own thoughts in your heart. Today I won't be pure anymore. So naturally this thing can't be done. Speaking of which, it's the end of your luck, you child. As he spoke, he pointed at Ingjuren. Do you know what I'm cooking in the crock? Without waiting for him to answer, he said, that Dahu is a natural spiritual creature, and it has gained the ability to take the form of a human. Eating a piece of its meat, a cultivator can nourish and consolidate their realm, and a mortal can extend their life by 100 years. But you don't eat it and share it with this demon. Since that's the case, forget it. I'll leave this Ling Kongzi here. You tell that Li Yunxin this child didn't do anything wrong. She had offended him, so she had been framed. Since she has been tortured these days, consider it as payback for the evil deeds of her previous life. Now that she is a human again, if there's a chance, tell him not to harm her, and let her be a hermit in the secular world for the rest of her life. The development of the matter was beyond Ingjuren's expectation. He thought there would be a fierce battle of life and death, and he would die here. But he didn't expect such a sudden turn. He didn't know whether it was true or not. A thought flashed in his mind and he was about to ask your name, but he saw a golden light suddenly appear on Lu Laodao's body. The golden light was like thousands of strands of golden fog, curling up and gathering in one place, forming a human figure. The human figure couldn't be seen clearly, but it was vaguely an old man. The old man paused on top of Lu Laodao's head, and suddenly went straight through the roof, shooting toward the sky in the east, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only Ingjuren and Mrs. Sanhua were left standing in the hall. Ingjuren saw a shadow. He was standing at the door and the feet of the shadow were connected to his. It was his own shadow. But the problem was, when they were talking it was just nighttime and the wind and rain were raging. How could he see a shadow now? He hurriedly turned to look outside. He saw a clear sky and white clouds in the sky. The sky had brightened, and the bonfire in the hall had long been extinguished. The demon on the west side of the house, with half of its body left, was nowhere to be seen, but the bloody body on the east side was still there. But Mrs. Sanhua was nowhere to be seen. At this time he heard a voice outside the house. Hero Ing, how's your enlightenment? Ingjuren fixed his eyes on the voice, and saw Yu Meng standing in the courtyard outside the house, looking at him. Ingjuren had experienced the illusion of the round pearl country, so he didn't dare to take it seriously. He just frowned and said, Yu Meng said, 10 days ago when we were sent here, Taoist Lu said you were poisoned by the spider. When you raised your inner strength to protect your heart, you happened to be enlightened about the realm of the technique, so you stayed here for more than 10 days. Today I saw you come out. How's your enlightenment? Ingjuren blinked and looked outside the house in a daze. He saw Lu Laodao, who was supposed to be in the house. He smiled and bowed to Ingjuren. You must have had a breakthrough. Congratulations, Laodao. Black Blade Ingjuren took a deep breath in disbelief, and remembered a certain legend. A woodcutter entered the mountain and met an immortal playing chess. He looked at the chess game and then looked at his axe, but even the handle was rotten. It had been hundreds of years. At this time, another sentence jumped into his mind. The person who possessed Lu Laodao once said, ran into this space of a big animal. It's clean inside. Inside. Chapter 235. Although the old man's words were arrogant and mysterious, he was still logical. Then, since he mentioned the word this, Ingjuren did not care too much. He only asked one thing first. Did anyone come to the outside world recently? Lu Laodao and Yu Meng were both surprised when they heard the question. Then they told him the truth that someone had been here. On the second day after they arrived, a Taoist priest came. And he flew. He was at least in the state of the outer fringe. Although a Taoist priest in the state of the outer fringe could fly, it was difficult for him to do so. This meant that the Taoist priest's state should be higher. They could not see it in the fog, but the rat and rabbit spirits outside the fog could see it. The Taoist priest was like a blind man. He saw the dense fog in the forest, but he ignored it. He bumped around in the forest in a daze. After bumping around for a while, he left as if he could not find him. Ingjuren remembered what the old man said to him at night. He said that they might be the bait released by Daotong to lure Li Yunxin to open the prohibition spell. Now that they were confined here, they could avoid more trouble for Li Yunxin. Now that he knew what had happened, he knew that the mutant person who possessed Lu Laodao was telling the truth. The mutant person said that he did not mean any harm. It seemed like he was telling the truth. Whether it was intentional or not, he had helped Li Yunxin a little. Ingjuren looked into the house again. The body on the west side was gone, but the Ling Kongzi on the east side was still there. He pointed at the body of the Ling Kongzi and asked if they knew who it was. At this point, everyone could tell that something was wrong with him. But he still answered him. He said that he did not know when he was born in this house. No one knew who he was. Although he looked ferocious and scary, he did not harm anyone. Moreover, strange things often happened in this place, so he just let it be. Ingjuren let out a long sigh after listening to this. He looked up at the sky. The sky was a dazzling blue, and the sunlight was a little strange. The sky was clear, but the sun was nowhere to be seen. There was no sun. Light seemed to come from all directions, filling up this small world. He sat down slowly on the dry front steps and leaned on his knife. After thinking for a while, he said, "Listen to me. I don't know if it's real or fake. If you think it's fake, just take it that my spider venom hasn't been completely removed and I'm just imagining it." Then he slowly recounted what happened last night to himself. He had a habit of touching his chin with his hand when he was thinking. Ingjuren had a broad chin which he especially liked. He thought it made him look strong and powerful, so he used to shave. In this era, men with long beards were considered beautiful. Whether it was Li Yunxin or him, shaving like this was rare, but it wasn't rare. Therefore, when he spoke, he realized that Lu Laodao and Yu Meng were not trying to coax him. The last time he shaved was after he entered the city of Wei. In his time, it had only been 2 days. Maybe there would be stubble on his chin, but it wouldn't grow. But now that he touched it, he realized it was already a mess. In the end, he told everything he had seen and heard. Then he spread out his hands. "I didn't go into seclusion. It's only been a day here. I don't even know if you guys are real or just illusions. But that person said it's clean inside. I'm thinking, where are we now?" At first, people thought he was talking nonsense. Maybe the spider venom hadn't been completely removed, or there was something wrong with his practice. But as he spoke, Lu Laodao's face gradually changed. Because some of what Ingjuren said couldn't be made up. Ingjuren said that he and the strange person who possessed Lu Laodao said that the weather here was strange. But the strange person said that the wind and rain were not strange. It was normal for there to be a rain of fish, a rain of meat and green plums. Ingjuren thought it was just a casual remark, but Lu Laodao knew it was true. These days it was normal for there to be wind and rain in the sky. But there were many more unusual things, not to mention the rumbling sound that came from the sky from time to time. The sound was like muffled thunder, but it seemed to be very far away. Once it started, it would take a long time for it to stop, but the sky was cloudless and there was no rain at all. As for the rain of fish and meat, it was indeed real. Otherwise, how could Lu Laodao survive these days? Every now and then, those things would fall from the sky. And they were all cooked fish and meat. They fell one by one, covering the sky and covering the earth. Some of them broke into meat paste when they hit the ground, and some rolled into the mud and couldn't be eaten. Occasionally, some would hang on the branches and leaves of the trees, and Lu Laodao would wait for it to stop, then take it to eat. He used to be a foodie, so he felt that the taste was familiar. After eating a few times, he smacked his lips and realized that it was the food of the Southernwood house in the city. When he and Li Yunxin lived in the Dragon King Temple, incense was abundant and they had plenty of money. Occasionally they would ask the Southernwood house to send some noodles to eat, and he could still remember the taste. Because of Ingjuren's words, Lu Laodao recalled this memory. Then he thought of another thing. Fish and meat didn't fall every day, and occasionally there would be fruit. That fruit was none other than a sour green plum. He had eaten that thing for 2 days in a row, and now that he thought about it, he felt that his tongue was overflowing with saliva, and he could spit out water droplets when he opened his mouth. Green plum was Brother Xian's favorite. When he had nothing to do, he would occasionally take a green plum and slowly nibble on it. Lu Laodao looked at it and felt sour in his mouth, so he asked him why he ate it. Li Yunxin laughed and said that it wasn't something you could eat just because you wanted to. He was walking on the street when he bumped into someone selling this thing. It was sour and astringent and no one asked for it, so he bought a whole basket. When he felt that there was no taste in his mouth, he would pick one and slowly chew on it. It always cheered him up and reminded him. He also bought this thing. Lu Laodao and Lu Gongzan carefully thought about Ingjuren's words, and his eyes became brighter and brighter. An idea was spinning in his mind, ready to come out. He couldn't care less about other people. He showed his ability and jumped onto the roof and stared at the blue sky. After a while, he lowered his head and asked Ingjuren in a loud voice, "Did the strange man in your dream say anything else?" Ingjuren thought for a while and felt that he had said all the important things. There was nothing important. It was just the words that the strange man said before he left. Like, "The luck is over, if there is a lucky chance," and other mysterious things. Lu Laodao listened to him again and he was silent for a while. He stood on the roof and stared at the sky. After watching for a while, he suddenly smiled. Master Ing, you will know soon whether what you experienced was a dream or an illusion, real or fake. 2 flowers bloomed and each had a branch. However, Ing Juren only felt that one night had passed, but more than 10 days had passed. Li Yunxin and Dong Ting also felt the same. Everyone would feel that time passed slowly when they were bored. One day seemed to have been more than 10 days and it was terribly long. Boredom was because of boredom. Although there were beautiful women, interesting strange men, and some stupid and cute monsters, the beauty must be the one he liked. But a beauty had to be someone he liked, and an interesting person had to know the background of his identity and make sure that he wouldn't cause any trouble. As for the monsters in the lake, Dragon Son used to be much better than them, but he still talked and laughed with Dragon Son. What was the point of these useless soldiers and crab generals? He was waiting these days. He was bored and anxious, but there was nothing he could do. He really overestimated the ability of those monsters. Originally, he rushed into the water to destroy Li Shan's cave, and he asked him to take his family to wipe out the monsters one by one. However, he soon realized that it was time-consuming and laborious, so it was better to ask them to gather together and send themselves to him. He knew that the Ao King sent his little monsters everywhere to invite people to work together. It was a pity that a group of monsters could not help him, so they just ignored him. Li Yunxin thought for a while and then he went to ask Su Weng, who lived in Mount June. He wanted to get some information from the old man, so he often chatted with him. That day when he was rambling, he told her about his worries. Those demons were too disappointing and couldn't gather at the same place. Su Weng seemed to be a playful person. He said it was easy. He immediately walked to the lakeside and shouted. The evil flood dragon in the lake obediently appeared. When Su Weng ordered it to destroy the demon's cave, the evil Jiao dragon went without saying a word. That was how the evil dragon destroyed the Panxian Valley, and the Valley Master, Red Snake King, went to find the Ao King to work together. Li Yunxin waited. After waiting for more than 10 days, he finally gathered about 30 to 40% of the monsters in the lake. According to Li Shan, the 5 Valley Masters, led by Ao Wang, had gathered a group of demons and were searching for Li Shan. They said they wanted to find Li Shan and the person behind him, and at the same time, kill the evil Jiao dragon. However, in Li Yunxin's eyes, what they were doing was like children playing house. He just wanted to wait for them to start, then he would go and finish them all. Right now he was mainly doing 2 things. First, he wanted to make Su Weng happy. Second, he wanted to find the location of the dragon soul in the Dong Ting. Because he said something to Su Weng that day. Li Yunxin was not a person who liked to use force. To be able to stand in the darkness and watch the enemy die, he would never want to be sweating profusely as he cut the enemy to death with his blade. Of course, before the enemy was about to die, he had to come out from the dark and say something. Otherwise, what was the point of killing? Since he knew something about Su Weng's past from Li Shan, he could not hide it in his heart. Su Weng seemed to believe in the saying, if there are flaws all over, then there are no flaws. From the first time he met Li Yunxin, he told him everything. He did not hide his identity or his supernatural power. He carried forward the method of only telling part of the truth, and he was indeed powerful and unpredictable. Li Yunxin really did not know which flaw to hit. Since it was like this, he would not pretend to be a villain. He had something on his mind, so he asked. After getting the news from Li Shan that day, he took Li Shan back to Mount June. First, he threw the 10th young master in front of Su Weng and asked him to tell him everything. Then he drove him out and closed the door. Only he and the old man were left in the room. At that time it was already dark. They were in the middle hall of the Ziwei Palace in Mount June. The middle hall was built on the hillside with a cliff on one side. At this moment, from the window, they could see the bright moon hanging over the vast Dong Ting and the vast lake. It was a beautiful scene like a fairyland. Li Yunxin leaned against the window and looked at Su Weng, who was eating and drinking in the room. He smiled and said, I didn't mean to find out your background. I just met a group of demons and killed them casually. It turned out that they were related to your Su family. I thought about what he said for a while and felt that your life experience was so strange. You see, you are not an ordinary person. Your means are so brilliant that I can't even see your background. But you don't look like a demon. Logically speaking, I think your way of doing things is very similar to the Freemasonry. But you are against them. Then, could it be that you are someone from the Orthodoxy? But people from Daotong? Li Yunxin slightly lengthened his voice. When the cool lake breeze blew in through the window, he stared at the old man's face carefully. How can those idiots be as interesting as you? So I think you are not from Daotong. I say, old man, at this moment, I am also half the owner of this Dong Ting. I serve you well and talk to you every day. You said that you still have 10 or 20 days to live. I am also taking care of you when you are old, so can you tell me your background? I know the masters all like to be mysterious. They ask the younger generation to figure out many things by themselves. I have heard a lot of such things. It is so amazing. But old man, you have to know that it is survivor bias. Stories of people who understand are passed down. Everyone thinks, wow, that's great. There are more people who don't understand. As a result, both of them are disappointed and no one records it. So, Li Yunxin walked to the front of Su Weng and sat down. He poured a glass of wine for him and looked at him sincerely. Let's be more sincere and less tricks. Let's be frank, okay? I am in a hurry now. I am worried about my people outside and I am also afraid that I will lose my life. If you need me to do something, you can tell me. If I think it is a win-win situation, I will try my best to do it. I don't think it is reliable and I don't like people who don't agree. Even if you don't say anything and force me, it will be a life and death struggle in the end. Li Yunxin sighed and said kindly, you have to know, I am actually a very cruel person. The old man just listened quietly. After hearing the last sentence of Li Yunxin, he laughed. He picked up the wine on the table and drank it up. He put it down and smacked his lips. You are so impatient. He thought for a while and let out a long breath. Okay. Now that you say so, according to your temperament, if I don't give you something, you will talk to me with a smile and plot against me in secret. You said you are cruel. I also know this old man. But it is also because of this. The smile on Su Weng's face slowly disappeared. But he didn't become cold. Instead, he became serious. It is because you are too cruel and evil. So even if there is a way to get you out of Dongting, you can't do it now. Don't worry. The old man said that I have a long life, so I won't live long. When I die, you can naturally leave Dongting. Li Yunxin smiled and was about to say something. Su Weng interrupted him. Don't smile. I know you have done those things. I also know you were forced to do many things. But, there is one thing I want to ask you. How did the girl of the Yin family die? Li Yunxin slowly straightened up. He slightly narrowed his eyes and a soft smile appeared on his face. What are you talking about? Chapter 236. The daughter of the Yin family, Yin Shuero. When Li Yunxin first came to the city of Wei, he made a statue for Lu Laodao's Dragon King Temple. When the statue appeared, the residents nearby thought it was real, so they often came to worship it. So Yin Shuero also came. Yin Shuero's uncle was Inspector Yin Pingji. The girl went to the Dragon King Temple, but she didn't really believe in God. She just gave up a lot of money every day just to talk to Li Yunxin. Su Weng mentioned her at this moment. A gentle smile appeared on Li Yunxin's face. But if Lu Laodao was here, he would know that this was the most dangerous time for him. Li Yunxin could laugh wildly, sneer, but this kind of smile was like a poisonous snake before it pounced. Su Weng didn't understand his temper and didn't seem to care about it. Instead, he looked at him seriously, reached out his hand and tapped on the table, saying, "You're a smart kid. You're more scheming and resourceful than ordinary people. I don't know how you took over this body, but I know a little about the previous method. Old man, tell me, see if I'm right. In your original plan, there were two people who played the most important role. One was the child beggar you met on Changmen Street, and the other was Inspector Yin. You gave the treasure to the beggar, but the beggar was killed in the alley and the treasure was taken away. The person who killed him was Inspector Yin. Inspector Yin robbed your thing and wanted to climb the social ladder, so he gave your painting to the magistrate of the city of Wei. Your painting entered the magistrate's yamen without arousing Lu Ling's suspicion. This was your goal. You wandered around Changmen Street for many days and did strange things, but it was all to cover up and pave the way. The difficult part is how to make Inspector Yin ruin your plan. Previously, Inspector Yin was tamed by you and he wanted to make friends with you. Why did he suddenly turn against you and become so deranged?" The old man paused for a moment. Li Yunxin heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. He stared into Su Weng's eyes and asked, "Who exactly are you? If I had to guess, I'd say you're the art saint. Am I right?" Su Weng squeezed out a small smile on his face, but it disappeared in a flash. "You are also a daring child." But his guess was wrong. You don't need to know who this old man is, you only need to know that he can't escape from the palm of my hand. I'm not trying to harm you, I'm trying to help you. You go astray. In these few days I have to teach you the right way of life. Since his reincarnation, no one had ever said such words to Li Yunxin. He wasn't a gentle person to begin with and he hated authority the most. Hearing this he sneered, "Behave? Old man, get this straight. I'm a demon now, not a human. Su Weng shook his head. It did not just refer to people born from parents. Demons also know about the right way of life. But let's not talk about this first. Sit down properly. Li Yunxin wanted to get up, but Su Weng waved his hand. Strangely enough, he felt a gentle force pressing down on him. It was as if there was another Li Yunxin on his body. He wanted to move, but that person didn't want to move, opposing him in everything. He was trapped on this bench. But it wasn't any violence, just don't tell him to get up. Su Weng continued, sit down and listen to me. Why did Inspector Yin Pingji suddenly hate you so much? It's because of a mirror. That night you went to the Yin residence to borrow a mirror, but you climbed over the wall and went to Yin Shuero's room to borrow it. Why did you borrow a mirror? Take a good look at yourself. You may have to draw your own appearance and energy, so the more detailed, the better. You don't need to frown. The art school. It used to be a flourishing school. This old man isn't the art saint, but I know about these things. If you have this and that kind of supernatural power, why did you use a mirror? It's fine if you wanted to borrow a mirror, but why did you go to the Yin residence? You clearly knew that the ninth young master was hovering in the sky above Weiqing City and might see you, but you still went. The old man shook his head and looked at Li Yunxin. You actually lured the ninth young master to the Yin residence and asked him to eat Yin Shuero alive. The Yin residence's Inspector Yin loved his niece very much and blamed it on you. That's why he turned against you, killed the beggar, and sent that important painting to the magistrate's yamen. Li Yunxin, don't you think so? Li Yunxin didn't say anything and only smiled at the old man. This seemed to be the only thing he could do at the moment. Su Weng saw that he didn't say anything inside. You think I want to accuse you of this, but you're wrong. What I want to ask you today is the devil in your heart. Li Yunxin, that day at Dongting Lake, you told Bai Yanjun that you had a clear conscience, that you killed people who deserved to be killed, and that you're a human devil, not a demon. Do you really have a clear conscience toward Yin Shuero? In your plan, Yin Pingji is a difficult character to change, so you had to make him turn against you. If you really are a human devil and cruel, just go to the Yin residence and kill Yin Shuero. Why did you use the ninth young master's hand? He said this again. Li Yunxin finally frowned and snorted. You're not the art saint, why do you care so much about me? What's the difference between the cultivators of Daotong and the demons when they kill civilians? If they really need to kill, they won't even blink. Why don't you go and teach them a lesson? Do you think I'm a soft-hearted person? The old man stared at him. Do you know what's the difference between you and them? He picked up a chopstick and gently knocked on the edge of the wine glass. The cultivators of Daotong never showed mercy when killing people because there was no need to. They crossed the doom and forgot their emotions, so they didn't care about the life and death of those secular people. They wanted to kill Yin Shuero, so they did it. Even if they didn't want to be known by others, they had other ways. But do you still remember what happened at that time? Su Weng knocked on the edge of the wine glass again. The wine glass was made of jade, and the chopsticks were made of silver. The two hit each other, making a clear sound of gold and jade, as if the fog above the whole Dongting was dispelled. This sound and his question immediately stunned Li Yunxin. He widened his eyes and couldn't say a word. Looking at him sitting like this for a while, Su Weng sighed slightly. You don't remember, right? You know what happened that day, but you can't remember the details. That's because you used a magical method to hide that memory. You told yourself not to think about it, told yourself to forget about it, so that you wouldn't have a devil in your heart. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Yunxin suddenly became furious. Although he couldn't stand up and could only sit, it didn't prevent him from doing something else. He saw Wei River Dragon King suddenly hit the table, and the table was smashed into powder. Even the bowls and cups on it were smashed into tiny pieces. He shouted, "Where did this old scoundrel come from? Why did you ruin my cultivation?" After he shouted this, he felt something sweet in his throat. A mouthful of golden dragon blood was spat out, which scattered into a golden light in the air. But his attack didn't hurt Su Weng at all. The old man also returned a palm strike without batting an eyelid. The fragments that were floating in the air immediately gathered back and became a table full of food and wine again. Do you know that you're digging your own grave? The old man shouted in a deep voice. You suppressed your devil in your heart and became a demon. Do you think that you don't need to go through a tribulation as a demon? If you want to stop at the mysterious realm, you can do whatever you want. But if you want to ask for love, sooner or later you need to have a Tao heart and go through a tribulation. With your temperament, have you ever thought about what would happen to you once you reached the profound realm, but your cultivation stagnated, and you buried your inner demons and couldn't retreat? Li Yunxin abruptly stood up. The restriction on her body had disappeared without her noticing. He stood up, rolled up his sleeves, and looked like he was going to fight with Su Wang like a boorish man in the marketplace. But after thinking for a while, he seemed to know that he was no match for the old man, so he kicked the stool in front of him. The stool spun a few times in the room, broke through the paper window and flew out of the room. Outside the room, Li Shan heard the noise and quickly ran in to ask, "What's the matter, my king?" Li Yunxin scolded, "Get lost." Li Shan immediately stopped talking and ran far away. Then he kicked and punched around the room angrily. After a quarter of an hour he finally stopped. He turned to glare at Su Wang and pointed at him. "Old bastard, are you the White King of Hell or the Black King of Hell? Otherwise, how do you know these things?" Su Wang was still not angry. He sat in front of the table and just watched Li Yunxin go crazy. He looked at him for a while and said, "You guessed wrong too. What on earth do you want?" Li Yunxin looked at him angrily. "You want to reason with me? I know a lot of reasons and I don't need you to tell me." The old man smiled slightly. "I know your cultivation is ruined now. You feel guilty for what you did but you just suppressed it. Now I found out for you that your mind is restless, your thoughts are not clean, and your realm is not stable. But you have to know that there is no safer place than Dongting in the world at this moment. If you are not here now, will you have such a good chance to get rid of your devil in the future? You feel guilty for Yin Shuero, so you still have feelings in your heart. But you claim to be ruthless. In fact, you don't understand feelings. You don't understand those feelings, so you just pretend that they don't exist. If you really encounter something like Yin Shuero, you just can't be ruthless. You look down on the people of Daotong, but now you should know. The cultivation method of Daotong that has been passed down for thousands of years has its own mystery. You should also know why human cultivators don't want to be Yin spirits. You are the perfect example. You have become a Yin spirit, but you still have a human heart. You can't even learn the ruthlessness of Daotong and the demons. Is there anyone in the world who is more embarrassed than you? Li Yunxin's chest was moving up and down violently. He stared at Su Wang fiercely like an angry lion. After Su Wang finished speaking, he took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Okay. Even if what you said is reasonable. Even if you do it for me, I don't ask who you are. What do you want me to do? Go through doom like those people of Daotong?" He suddenly pointed his hand to the west. "A group of bastards outside the inhibition of Dongting is guarding me. They think I can handle the inhibition, but I won't let them in. Do you want me to go through doom at this time? Then I will go through this doom and that doom, until I become like those bastards." Li Yunxin spread his hands. "What's the difference between that and death?" Su Wang heard his words and laughed. "Yes. There's no difference. So you don't want to go through doom and I don't want you to either. Today I just want to teach you the truth of being a human. You used to be a human, but now you are a demon. But in my world, human doesn't look at the physical body, nor does it look at the body. Only those who have 7 emotions and 6 desires are human. If they lack too many, they are not human. The cultivators of Daotong are not human in my world. I'm not talking about being a human. It's good that you are scheming, willing to use your brain and can do things. But I hope you will think about the future before you do things in the future. Most people in this world don't like the righteous path. They talk about morality, benevolence and righteousness, but the way they do things is different. In the secular world, I also know that if you are upright and pedantic, there will naturally be people who want to take advantage of you and step on you. You want to say that the heavenly Tao will be rewarded? In today's world, that's bullshit. The people of this world believe in the deities of the heavenly cave school, and believe in the celestial beings of the heavenly court, but who knows what they are and what shady business they do. But in the world of cultivators, it's very different. The heavenly Tao doesn't exist in the secular world, but it exists in the world of cultivators. Su Wang said these words and stood up. He strolled to the window and gave his back to Li Yunxin, as if he wasn't the least bit worried that Li Yunxin would suddenly attack. For example, your matter. You are like the cultivators of Daotong and the demons. If you killed Yin Shuero with a clear conscience, then it's fine. But you have a clear conscience. You have a guilty conscience, and the heavenly Tao is in your heart. Thus, the heavenly Tao can't forgive you. You have a heart demon. With your personality, if you really want to cultivate, you can't learn the way of the demons, and you also can't learn the way of the cultivators. You have to have your own way of doing things. If you have a guilty conscience, if you don't feel comfortable, then don't do it. You can let go of your restraints and indulge your nature, but only when you feel that you have a clear conscience will you do it. Only then will the heavenly Tao be clear, only then will you have a chance to ask about love. After listening to him say so much, Li Yunxin's expression became even calmer. He stood under the moonlight with his hands clasped behind his back and stared at Su Weng's shoulder. Then he sneered, "The heavenly Tao that you speak of, to me, is no different from the situation in the secular world. What if the heavenly Tao is in my heart? For example, a cultivator and I killed the same person. I couldn't bear it, so I spared him. That cultivator didn't have the slightest bit of mercy. He killed me and took a heavenly treasure. Then he refined it into a magic weapon and killed me. What's the use of the heavenly Tao in my heart? It'll only make me die quickly. It's better for me to bury my heart demon and move forward. Perhaps the clouds will disperse and the moon will shine brightly, and there will be a new world." The old man turns around. His face is hidden in the shadow, only being plated with a layer of cold light by the moonlight behind him. Li Yunxin hears his even lower voice. "When you were outside Mount Bianjuan in Dongting, you talked to Bai Yanjun about the principle of karma and retribution in the world. Do you really think there is no heavenly Tao in this world? If the heavenly Tao can be seen by you, what kind of heavenly Tao is it? The heavenly Tao is invisible. It's narrow-minded to say that it's something, idea, theory, or even the mysterious fruit of fate. If you can say it and distinguish it, then it's not heavenly Tao. I'm telling you these things today so that you can have a clear conscience in the future. Whether you really have a clear conscience or not, when the heavenly Tao's karma comes in the future, you will know that I really want to help you today." Li Yunxin suddenly frowns, keenly aware of the profound meaning in the old man's words. He doesn't even care about getting angry. He just steps forward and leans forward to ask, "What do you mean? What is karma?" Chapter 237. But the old man shook his head and smiled in the darkness. He said he would leave after a month, but now there are some changes. That old man left just like that. But you have to know, there will be retribution and so will the heavenly Tao. You don't need to care about the world, but you have to live a magnanimous life. There's one thing you have to know. The old man looked at Li Yunxin with a burning gaze. Some people may have this illusion, that everything in this world goes according to his will. Every misfortune will turn into fortune, and every misfortune will turn into fortune, as if all the luck in this world is with him. Thus, his realm is higher and his vision is higher. He feels that he is the chosen one by heaven and fate. But sometimes things are not that simple. The luck you receive may not be luck. You are also a person who likes to play games, so you should understand the thoughts of the people in your game. Luck may be given by others. Since it can be given, it can also be taken away. There's an example recently, that Ling Kongzi, isn't she a favored one? Her pride in the past was no less than yours now. You mean someone is helping me? Li Yunxin immediately said, "I know this. But why? What does the Daotong monster and demon Freemasonry want me to do?" His words came out in a rush, one after the other. Because he saw the old man's body gradually hunched over, as if he was weakening at a speed visible to the naked eye. But the old man could no longer reply, he was like a withered tree. Before Li Yunxin could say another sentence, the old man fell down softly, no longer having his previous magical power and imposing manner. Li Yunxin stepped forward in time and inserted his arms under the old man's ribs to support him. He only asked, "Are you really dead or are you an incarnation?" The old man tried his best to widen his eyes to look at him. His white hair lost its luster, turning into a dry, dead gray. His skin also began to shrivel like a dried fish. Li Yunxin read the meaning in his eyes. The two hypotheses he asked were not options. This old man was not really dead, nor was he an incarnation. He could not think of any other options. 2 breaths later he could no longer support Su Weng. The old man's body became even drier and drier until it turned into a pile of ashes and disappeared into the night. Perhaps it was an illusion, but Li Yunxin saw a golden light shooting into the sky from the dust. But at this moment the moonlight was bright and clear and he was astonished. Even if he saw wrongly he wouldn't know. After another quarter of an hour the dust dispersed. He was the only one left in the room, standing in the moonlight. When Su Weng was around, Li Yunxin appeared powerless and irritable. He was trapped by the old man and had no choice but to obediently listen to his instructions. Now that Su Weng was gone, Li Yunxin's face was still filled with fear and doubt. He used his divine art to check if there were any brilliant arrangements or formations. Then he tried his best to listen to the sounds coming from the top and bottom of the mountain. After doing all this and confirming that the mysterious Su Weng had indeed disappeared, he heaved a sigh of relief. The fear and anxiety on his face disappeared. He became calm. He even curled his lips into a smile. The person who could understand his smile was not by his side at the moment. So, his smile was only for the moonlight to see. After a while he turned around and sat at the table. He picked up the silver chopsticks and ate something. This crepe myrtle palace was built on top of the Lord Dongting mountain. Although it was magnificent and quiet, it was far away from the secular world. This meant that there was either a huge logistics team to provide everything needed here, or they had to endure in the vast and spacious palace. Obviously it was the latter situation. Li Yunxin didn't know how Red Lady had satisfied her cravings these days. When the Lord Dongting left, he seemed to have taken all his soldiers with him. Even the white and soft maids he saw before were gone. So the chef must have been gone too. These days, Su Weng's food was taken care of by himself. It wasn't that he wanted to roll up his sleeves and cook. He had a dragon palace. In the past, he and Lu Laodao loved to eat and sometimes they would go out for a stroll. Li Yunxin didn't have a special concept of money in this world. He definitely didn't lack money when he was with his parents. Later, when they went to the Dragon King temple, they had an income of incense. They didn't need to buy cosmetics or clothes. They didn't need to save money to buy land, so they ate it all. Whenever they felt it was delicious, they would order another meal to be prepared. He put all of it into his folding fan. The space in the fan would store food so that it wouldn't spoil. It would be the same as it was put in. Later, when he went to the abandoned palace to see the ghost General Diwu Boyu, he ate green plums from the fan. These days he was eating the stalk. The Southwood restaurant was not the best in the city of Wei, but it was the most popular. Su Weng also liked eating, and this was the last meal in his fan. He filled his stomach a little and felt that it was not the way to go on like this. He didn't know how long he had to stay here. But he couldn't eat the wind and drink the dew. Theoretically it was possible. But most of the time, people didn't want to eat because they were hungry. He was already in a not-so-optimistic environment. If he didn't have other fun, he would be in a constant state of anxiety. This was the time when Li Yunxin sat silently at the table after Su Weng died, what he was worried about. He spent a quarter of an hour thinking about these things, as if what Su Weng said to him was just a passing cloud. Then footsteps came from outside the door. Li Yunxin looked up and saw Red Madam with one hand on the door, looking at him with her eyes. He asked casually, "Have you eaten?" Red Madam walked in leisurely and glanced around the room. There was a big commotion just now. "I heard something. What you said was mysterious. Where did Su Weng go?" She didn't want to eat anything. Li Yunxin didn't invite her to take a seat. He thought for a while and said, "I don't know if he's dead or not. But it's good that he's gone. I feel uneasy with him here." After saying that, he continued eating and drinking. Red Madam stood at the side and looked at him quietly. There were no candles in the room, only the sound of Li Yunxin eating and drinking could be heard. Red Madam stayed like this for a while, but Li Yunxin didn't seem to want to stop. Finally, she couldn't help but say, "I heard from you, Missine. After listening for a while, I roughly understood the situation. They said that you harmed her and lured ninth brother to attack. Is that true?" Li Yunxin raised his head and looked at her. He thought for a while and stopped eating. "Do you also care about this kind of thing?" Red Madam twisted the front of her clothes with both hands, revealing the demeanor of a little girl. She said stubbornly, "I just want to know." Li Yunxin sat quietly for a while and said with a smile, "It's fake. I just deliberately left a flaw so that people who think they are smart will think that it's my inner demon. You see, I also deceived him, which means I will also deceive others." After listening to his words, Red Madam was stunned for a long time. After a while she said, That, if you deliberately left a flaw, why did you tell me?" Li Yunxin smiled and didn't say anything. Red Madam looked at him as if she wanted to distinguish the truth from the lie from the expression on his face. But who had the ability to read Li Yunxin's mind from her face? She finally gave up and said faintly, "You said it so lightly, I don't know if what you said is true or false. Your attitude, if others saw it, I'm afraid they will think the same way. But if you think about it from another point of view, maybe you said it because you think others won't believe it." Li Yunxin stood up and walked to the window. He let out a light breath. "It doesn't matter whether I believe it or not. In the end, it's my own business. Something like a clear conscience. Anyone can say it. It just depends on how they do it." As he spoke, his voice gradually became lower, as if his own words had aroused his own thoughts and feelings. But soon he raised his head again. "Tomorrow I have two things to do. First, the palace is very cold and there is no one to serve me. Coincidentally, there are some people in the lake who are tired of living, so I will go catch them and see if I can find a good cook. What kind of dishes do you like?" Red Madam didn't know if he was joking or serious, so she didn't know how to answer. Li Yunxin said again, "But it's hard to say. those things like blood and flesh. It's not easy to make a fire under the water, who knows what kind of strange taste they will have. Then there's another thing. This Su Weng told me before that he had a way to open the restriction, but he disappeared. I think people like him don't like to brag. Maybe there will be a big change in the next 2 days. If the situation turns bad and blood flows like a river, I hope you will be mentally prepared. Red Madam wanted to say something but stopped. Li Yunxin immediately waved his hand and interrupted her. Don't mention your business. It's too troublesome to chase you out of the lake. He didn't know which of his words had touched Red Madam's heartstrings. The beautiful woman's bright eyes suddenly became misty, and she once again called out, Li Lang. Seeing her like this, Li Yunxin finally sighed. I don't understand why a demon like you has such a temperament. Now if anyone saw this scene, oh, they would definitely scold me, a scumbag. They would say that you are deeply in love with me, but I don't care, I'm really bad. But today I'm a bit emotional, so let's talk about this matter. Sit down. Li Yunxin pointed at the low stool next to the table. Red Madam blinked her eyes and sat down. Li Yunxin sighed. In the past your father and I were enemies. So I used some tricks on the enemies and their helpers to obtain my own benefits. In the end, I accidentally provoked you. Instead of you walking along the roadside, I jumped out to cheat your money, your body, and your feelings. Although it's not very upright, it's two different things. These days you always want to figure out, whether I like you or not, whether I have you in my heart. Li Yunxin smiled. Miss, the spring is beautiful and the world is peaceful. Maybe I like this feeling of being cared for, but the problem is, there is a group of people outside who want to kill me. So at this juncture, every day I think about how to save my life, and every day you think about whether I love you or not. Let's put it this way. Even if I originally loved you, now I can't love you. If I really want to love someone, as I said before, it must be someone who makes me feel interesting and surprised. This person and I are in sync and complement each other. She's my partner and my teammate, not a distraction. He said all this in one breath, and Red Madam stopped crying. Li Yunxin thought again and helplessly spread out his hands. There's one more thing, you can think about it carefully. At first, you thought I was a good person. Then you came to me and told me that if I kill you, I can get out of the lake. Put aside our subjective feelings and think about the nature of this matter. This is not just an awkward little girl coming to torture me, but she wants me to have another demon in my heart. Cultivation is a big thing, little girl. Li Yunxin slightly bent over to look at her. If anyone else dared to do this to me, the grass on their graves would have been 3 feet high. As soon as he finished speaking, he mounted the cloud and flew out of the window, leaving Red Madam sitting alone in the room in a daze. Li Yunxin flew for a while on the surface of the lake, and then he saw a white line in the water approaching him. He knew it was Li Shan. Li Shan was a transcendent realm demon of the Water Clan, but he didn't know any dharma, unlike cultivators who could fly in the sky and travel underground. But his speed in the water was extremely fast, almost as fast as him flying on the clouds. Li Yunxin had some other plans in mind, so he wanted to end the matter of the Water Clan in the lake as soon as possible. Seeing Li Shan's head coming out of the water, he grabbed the air and brought him up to the cloud. He asked, "Why don't I see you? Where did you go?" The white eel spirit hurriedly opened his mouth. He looked a little panicked, as if he wanted to say something like, "Something bad is going to happen." But when he looked at Li Yunxin, he swallowed his words and pretended to be calm. He said, My king, there is an extraordinary person outside the lake." Li Yunxin was slightly stunned at first, and then he asked with a normal expression, "Dragon's son?" Obviously not. Li Shan was dizzy and didn't hear what Li Yunxin said clearly. He just continued, "It's the adopted daughter of the golden-winged rock king, a great demon called Bai Yunxin." He thought that after saying these words, his Dragon King's face would loosen a little. But he didn't know that his Dragon King had fought with the terrifying Bai Yunxin when he was in the Emptiness Realm. They were already old friends. Therefore Li Yunxin smiled lazily. "Oh, it's her. What is she doing here?" Li Shan found a new master and felt that he was more important than when the Lord Dongting was here. Therefore he really wanted to make a big career. He was really worried that the Dragon King would ruin his future because of his unreasonable behavior. He said hurriedly, "My king, you don't know, Bai Yunxin has a maid who is very favored by her. It is said that Bai Yunxin will listen to everything you say. She is really amazing. She is a maid, but she is no worse than a sister. But do you know who the maid is, my king? She is the daughter of the old turtle in the Cauldron Cast Valley in the lake." Li Shan sighed with fear and hatred when he said this. Now Bai Yunxin came to Dongting for the worm meat in the lake. She came to get the meat for her adopted father. At first, we thought that the woman couldn't come in, so we let those guys do whatever they wanted. We thought it would be easier for them to gather together. But now, my king." Li Shan's voice trembled slightly when he said this. Bai Yunxin came into the lake. As soon as he said this, Li Yunxin, who was calm at first, grabbed him and pulled him in front of him, shouting, "She came in." "How did she come in?" Chapter 238. Li Shan feels that his king's reaction at this moment is finally serious. He hurriedly says, "I don't know, but I think those demons with a high realm have their own ways. Maybe the inhibition can't stop them." Speaking of this, he looks at Li Yunxin, but he can't see it. He can only pretend, "My king? What realm are you in?" Li Yunxin is not in the mood to talk to him or respond to his guess. 10th young master, Li Shan rarely leaves Dongting, so he only hears the name of Wei River Dragon King's 9th young master. Li Yunxin also says that he is Wei River Dragon King, and he is indeed a Shinryu. Therefore he naturally regards him as the 9th young master. It is said that the 9th young master is at the peak of the transcendent realm. It is enough to deal with the sea creatures in the lake. However, Li Shan doesn't know how to deal with Bai Yunxin. He doesn't think he can win. That's why he is so worried. He just wants to find a way to avoid the catastrophe in front of him. He can't change sides. The 5 Valley Masters have hated him for a long time. Now he finally has such an opportunity. How can he let it go? Therefore he thinks for his king and says, "Since your king doesn't want to say, well, I think you don't want to fight with Bai Yunxin." Of course. There is a saying in the art of war. He starts to say a lot of words. After all, he wants to give his king a way out so that Li Yunxin can take him to avoid the trouble. Maybe when Bai Yunxin gets the worm meat, she will go far away, then he can do something big. As he spoke, Li Yunxin listened to him. In fact, he doesn't take it seriously at all. He looks at the lake below while riding the wind. He is thinking about one thing. Is it a coincidence that Bai Yunxin comes at this moment? Tonight Su Weng died. Before he died, he told himself that he had a way to get out of Dongting. Then Bai Yunxin broke in. What Li Shan said about, "those with higher realms will have their own ways," was complete bullshit. Bai Yunxin was in the true state, and so was he. He even knew the Taoist magic of the school of painting. Speaking only of technique and not strength, he was much better than that scary little beauty. He had racked his brains but could not come up with an easy way to escape. This meant that there must be a key point that he did not understand, and it had little to do with his realm and strength. Besides, there was a precedent. When the Lord Dongting activated the seal, even Kun Wu Zi, who was at the mystical realm, could not enter. Then the Lord Dongting ran away. This meant that both Lord Dongting and Bai Yunxin had a solution. The method that Su Weng told him about to get out of this predicament might be related to Bai Yunxin. As he thought of this, Li Shan had also reached the crux of the matter. "I discovered it by chance. It was a very secluded place. Let's lie low for the time being. Once the limelight dies down, that Bai Yunxin won't stay for long." Li Yunxin smiled and said, "That's right. She probably won't stay for long. I still have some things to do with her. It's better to sort them out as soon as possible." Li Shan spoke enthusiastically and replied, "Your Majesty is wise, Your Majesty is wise." He answered casually, but he did not expect that Li Yunxin would not hide but go to find Bai Yunxin. He was instantly dumbfounded. Li Yunxin did not care about his reaction. He threw him down the cloud and said, "Since you are afraid, then hide well." Then he rode the cloud and went straight to the place where the monsters of the lake gathered according to Li Shan. He flew in the night for an hour and finally saw lights in the distance. The lights were on a small island, deep in the hinterland of Dongting Lake. Usually there was no one there, but now it was very lively. Speaking of which, the sea monsters in the lake did not like fire and smoke. They also liked to live in the water when they transformed into human forms. This time it was probably because of Bai Yunxin that he had just come ashore and caused such a scene. When Li Yunxin was 1 mile away from the island, he saw dense sea monsters in the water. They had not transformed into human forms, but they were very fat. They must be the uncivilized relatives of the lake monsters, and they all had a lifespan of about 100 years. As he moved forward, he saw small demons peeking at him from under the waves. After watching for a while, they dived down, probably to report. But he came from the sky and rode on the cloud. Who could not see him? When he approached the shore of the island, he was surrounded by the yellow light of the fire on the island, as if he was wrapped in a mass of topaz. At this time he saw clearly how those lake monsters lit the fire and made the fire shine for 1 or 2 miles. They actually set the entire forest on the island on fire. The fire soared into the sky, but it was blocked by a water wall on the shore. The water wall blocked the fire and heat, and a large white beach was circled as a square. The square was covered with all kinds of gold, silver, and jewelry, and on the table was a throne made of coral and rocks. A woman in white was sitting on the throne with one hand supporting her cheek. She seemed to be thinking about something. Under the throne, the demons were dancing wildly. No matter how strange they looked, all the demons that could come ashore were gathered together. They did not dare to get close to the woman, and only looked at her from afar. Some of them were praising, some were begging, some were whispering to each other, and some were fighting over small things. There were at least a few hundred of them, like a pot of boiling turbid water. When Li Yunxin got closer on her cloud, the fiendish demons all raised their heads. Most of them did not know who Li Yunxin was, but they should have heard about him. A big demon came to the lake. Because they had the support of Bai Yunxin, under the instigation of the Lake Valley Master and the Stream Master, they made a ruckus at him. Some of them bared their teeth like wild beasts and some of them said some dirty things. But they did not understand human language and their words did not make any sense. Li Yunxin did not care if they wanted to provoke him so that he could find trouble with Bai Yunxin. He could not remember the last time he used this kind of simple and primitive plot. He just landed on the platform in front of the throne, stared at the woman and let out a long breath. It was indeed Bai Yunxin. Because when he landed, he saw that there was a black donkey behind the throne. The first time Li Yunxin saw her, she was riding this donkey. He did not know that it was a divine creature, but it was really just an ordinary donkey. Bai Yunxin had a young maid beside her. Li Yunxin remembered the scene where this maid ate the head of a Kenzo cultivator outside the Mrs. Sanhua temple. Li Shan said this maid was the daughter of the Toad King in the lake. But now, because she was by Bai Yunxin's side, her level of cultivation seemed to be even higher than her father's. Being able to instantly kill a cultivator of Sword Sect who was on full alert was not something any demon could do. He was relieved. He was afraid that Li Shan had misheard the news. So he smiled, took a few steps forward and stopped 5 steps away from Bai Yunxin. At this moment, the lake demons had surrounded them. The 5 valley masters were in front, and the dozens of stream masters were behind. Even further back were the little demons that had taken human form. They clamored endlessly, jumping high into the air, wishing to watch a good show. Ao Wang pointed at Li Yunxin and said to Bai Yunxin, "My king, you see, it is him. He came to my lake and made a mess. He said he wanted to take over Dongting. I sent someone to ask him, where is Dongting? It is the fishing ground of the golden-winged rock king. How can he take over Dongting?" Who knew that this arrogant person said, "Thou, Dao." The first part of his speech was very smooth. He was really eloquent, but when it came to the second part he stuttered. His eyes rolled around but he just couldn't think of what to say. The Red Snake King was so anxious that he kept coughing but it didn't work. He pulled Ao Wang aside and spoke on his behalf. He said, "What is the heart of White Cloud? Even if she comes she will never return. She will be skinned, her feathers will be plucked to make a fan, and her legs will be used as drumsticks." Ao Wang hurriedly pulled her away, afraid that Bai Yunxin would vent her anger on him. The Red Snake King was addicted to talking, and he asked the other 3 cave masters one by one, "Is it true?" The old tortoise saw that his daughter was also here, and he felt that he had someone to rely on. If it wasn't for his bad tongue he would have said all these things. He hurriedly nodded and added a few more details. Only the Toad King of Changsha Valley was a little smarter. He just hummed and agreed but didn't say anything. He pretended to tie the belt on his robe. The snake spirit usually didn't like him, so she kept asking. The Toad King still didn't say anything. He just tied the belt higher and higher and it almost reached his chest. The snake spirit glared at him fiercely, spat in her heart and turned around to add more details. Ao Wang didn't say much, but the snake spirit spoke very quickly. After all this, not much time had passed. Li Yunxin landed on the ground, walked a few steps and bowed to Bai Yunxin. "I have to thank you first." The monsters were so noisy that they couldn't hear what he said, but they only saw his movements. Therefore they knew that this demon was afraid of Bai Yunxin, so they made even more noise. Bai Yunxin was lazy before, but now that she had waited for the person she wanted to see, she finally became a little more energetic. So she sat on the throne, and coldly stared at Li Yunxin for a while and said, "You don't have to thank me. I'm not helping you, I'm helping the Ghost Emperor. I owe him a promise and now I've paid it. So now it's time to talk about the matter between us." Li Yunxin put down his hand and straightened his body. "I'm sorry I killed your 9th young master. But this matter is very difficult. If I don't kill him he will kill me sooner or later. Now that he's dead I've become him. The body and soul that you like are still there. If I die you'll lose a love. Bai Yunxin originally had a lot of questions to ask him, but now that he said it like this, she couldn't say anything shamelessly. It was the first time she met such a person, so she opened her eyes wide and was stunned for a moment. The young maid beside her giggled and whispered a few words into Bai Yunxin's ear. They looked like a pair of master and servant in the mortal world. But when Li and Bai were talking, the monsters couldn't hear it clearly, but they felt that it wasn't something good. So they were even more proud. Now that they saw the maid's action, they were stunned. The voices stopped for a while and finally they heard what Li Yunxin was saying. They saw him casually walk to Bai Yunxin's side, pick up a few trinkets on her throne, take a look and then throw them away. As he threw them, he walked around her like he was taking a walk and said, "Now things are even easier. You see, this is what I think. You walk around in the secular world but you still want to imitate the behavior of the secular people. I can see that you're empty and lonely and also very cold. I think you're also an interesting person, and you must think that there aren't many people in the world who deserve to be your friend. For example, these idiots." Li Yunxin raised his hand and pointed at the group of quiet monsters. "They all think they're very smart, but they don't know that in our eyes they're stupid. To find me, you let them gather here and you put up with their noise for so long. I feel sorry for you." After saying these words, he walked to Bai Yunxin's side and said softly, "Why do you hurt yourself like this?" Listen to the shameless things that the snake spirit had said, and she herself was so proud of herself. "Let's not talk about these things and talk about us. Now I'm in the true state." Hearing his words and seeing that Bai Yunxin didn't get angry and didn't do anything, the monsters slowly felt that something was wrong. Now hearing Li Yunxin say that he was in the true state, they all knew what it meant and they were all stunned. At this moment, even the stupid monsters understood that Li Yunxin seemed to have been in contact with Bai Yunxin in the past. But who would know about this? "I'm in the true state and so are you. At this time, I'm not afraid of you, and I think it's not bad to be friends with you." Li Yunxin looked at her, but Bai Yunxin's face was wooden. Maybe she was too lazy to make an expression or she knew what expression to make. Li Yunxin thought it was the latter. "In the past, the 9th young master wanted to be friends with me, but in fact he only wanted to treat me as a plaything. He didn't realize it and it's very sad. This is the limitation of class. Now I'm not a plaything anymore and I can finally talk to you like this." Li Yunxin said this but paused a little. There were a few words that he wanted to blurt out, just like what he had said to Ling Kongzi and Red Madam before. However, there was a sudden stuffy feeling in his heart, and he forcibly suppressed the words in his throat. Seeing her miss didn't say anything, the maid hurriedly said it for her. She looked at Li Yunxin with the terrible naive and pure expression that only monsters had and said with a smile, "So, you've done all these things just to be worthy of my miss and to be friends with her?" In the past, Li Yunxin would probably answer her calmly, and then say a lot of sweet words to coax her. He could even try to use the environment here to do some good things. The fire behind the water wall was bright and dim, and it was the most suitable to use words to confuse the mind. However, he continued to be stunned for 2 breaths and then sighed with a smile, "Not really. It's just the situation. I used to be a human and I didn't dare to make friends with monsters." Hearing his words, the maid pouted. But Li Yunxin felt the stuffy feeling in his chest was gone. He felt much better. "Now I'm still a monster." Bai Yunxin stood up from the throne, took 2 steps and turned to look at Li Yunxin. "So am I." Li Yunxin smiled and spread out his hands. "I have the body of a monster and the brain of a human. You can't find a better friend than me. Besides, the world is going to be in chaos and one more friend means one more way." Bai Yunxin didn't say anything, and looked at him with her head tilted like a bird, as if she was making a decision. Li Yunxin made the decision for her. He smiled affectionately. "There's nothing to be shy about. You liked me the first time we met, and then you helped me when you learned that I killed the 9th young master. You still kept your promise, but it doesn't mean that you can't kill me by helping him. You're not angry with me anymore. And the current situation is perfect for you. You're just a little upset, but you're really like a lady in a boudoir. I think it's interesting. Moreover, you helped me gather all these demons together. First, you can say that you're trying to scare me, and second, you're trying to be nice to me. You're just a little girl's little thoughts. You're really cute." As he said this, he took 2 steps forward and waved his hand casually. The powerful demonic power of the true state great demon pierced into the crowd. The first one was the Red Snake King, who turned into a cloud of blood mist in the blink of an eye. Then the group of little demons behind her, who didn't know what happened, were scattered all over the ground. With just 1 sentence, Li Yunxin plowed a path of blood among the demons. And he didn't even look at them, he just smiled gently at Bai Yunxin and shook his head. She said a lot of bad things about you just now. I don't like it. Bai Yunxin tilted her head and looked at the group of frightened demons, the path of blood, and then looked at Li Yunxin. After a moment of silence, she finally showed a faint but beautiful smile. I don't like it either. Then I'll kill them all. Hurry up. I still have something to say to you. Li Yunxin grinned. Good girl. Soon. Then he waved his sleeves wildly and rushed towards the group of demons. Chapter 239. The demons only knew that Li Yunxin's cultivation level was higher, but they didn't have a concrete idea. Now that they knew he was at the true realm and saw him kill the Scarlet Snake King with a raise of his hand, they realized how terrifying he was. It was a strength that exceeded their understanding. Thus, after being stunned for a moment, they scattered like birds and beasts. Only the Valley Master of Changsha Valley and the Scarlet Flame Vermilion Toad King stood motionless, as though they were watching from the sidelines. This action saved his own life. The demons scattered, but they couldn't escape the control of the true realm Great Fiendish Demon. Li Yunxin waved his sleeves in mid-air, and dozens of demonic powers went straight for a few famous Great Fiendish Demons. With such a difference in cultivation level, regardless of technique or scheming, his demonic powers would kill anyone who came into contact with them. His demonic power killed anyone who came into contact with it. In just 2 breaths of time, those Valley Masters and Stream Masters were all killed by him. Those little demons were also thrown into the water like dumplings. After a while they disappeared. 15 minutes ago the island was still bright and bustling. It was still bright now. But these 2 words had to be said separately. The fire was bright and the ground was covered in rotten flesh. The white beach had been dyed red and the lake water had changed color. There were only 5 people left standing, Bai Yunxin and her servant, Li Yunxin, as well as the Toad King and the father of Bai Yunxin's servant girl, the 1,000-year-old turtle demon. The 2 Valley Masters in the lake weren't good people usually, and they had taken countless demon and human lives. But had they ever seen such a method of killing? Li Yunxin was very powerful, and he didn't have a demon's body or heart. He was vicious and merciless when killing fiendish demons, so he didn't hesitate at all. He spared the Toad King because his attitude was different from before, and spared the Turtle Demon because of Bai Yunxin's servant girl. Li Yunxin landed from the sky, and the flesh under his feet crunched noisily as he walked to the Toad King and looked down at him. Although the Toad King's expression didn't change, he didn't look very panicked. He raised his head slightly to meet Li Yunxin's gaze and said, "They were courting death, so I had no choice but to obey. But it's just waving flags and shouting battle cries. It's not a capital offense. So you look like a smart person." Li Yunxin reached out and patted his shoulder. He turned to look at Bai Yunxin's maid. "Little girl, what about your father?" The maidservant did not speak. She snorted and turned her head away from him. Seeing this, Li Yunxin sighed in his heart. Normally he probably wouldn't use such a bloody and brutal method to wash the beach with blood. But normally he wouldn't kill all the other demon kings, leaving only these 2 alive. It was because of what Su Weng had said to him in the Emperor Star Palace. Although the real situation and thoughts might be different from what Su Weng knew, it still touched Li Yunxin. Killing all the demons was due to the excitement in his heart. Leaving these 2 alive was also due to the excitement in his heart. But now, it seemed that the demons were truly heartless. But their heartless was only compared to the emotions of the mortals. The cultivators of Daotong were probably not in this category. He spared the turtle spirit's life for some reason, but he didn't know what this opportunity meant to the turtle spirit. The maidservant ignored the old thing, and the turtle spirit was not angry like a human. On the contrary, he had a look of relief on his face as he glanced at Li Yunxin from side to side. His eyes were full of flattery and worry, but it appeared on his wrinkled face. Li Yunxin looked at him and felt annoyed for no reason. He shouted, "Come out." As soon as he said that, a demon suddenly came out of the blood-like lake. It was Li Shan who was left behind by Li Yunxin. This demon fell into the water but didn't leave. He followed behind Li Yunxin to this island. Although he didn't show himself, he didn't run away. For a demon, this was considered a great display of loyalty and courage. Li Yunxin didn't care how this demon looked or what he was thinking. He just said, "Since you 3 are old friends, you can teach them well. All the small things in this lake can be dealt with at the same time. I just want a docile Dong Ting. Think about the Blood Sea today if there is any trouble." Li Shan saw that his king didn't blame him, so he was very happy. He said yes repeatedly. Then he raised a pair of invisible eyes and fiercely shouted at the 2 demons to go to the lake. There were only 3 people left on the red beach, 3 demons. Before, Bai Yunxin had been sitting on the throne and watching Li Yunxin do things and talk. Now she finally spoke. But her voice was different from before. She became more human. Before, Bai Yunxin was like a volcano that would erupt at any time. You listened to her and watched her do things like ordinary people. But in the next moment she might show her fangs and raise her hand to kill you. But now her voice sounded calmer and softer, as if the waves and anger in her heart had been calmed down a lot. It also seemed that she had lost interest in many things and just looked at the world lazily. They are not simple. You should talk to them. Bai Yunxin looked at Li Yunxin with a strange look in her eyes. I knew you were not simple, but I didn't expect you to be so complicated. It's just boring. Li Yunxin thought about her words for a while. You mean they may have something to do with the dragon soul in this lake? Besides, he couldn't think of anything else that could make Bai Yunxin, a demon in the real realm, feel not simple. Yes, but you don't have to worry about it. You won't have to worry about it soon. She paused and tilted her head to look at Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin realized that this temperamental true-state demon seemed to be hiding something in his heart, so she waited quietly. It was probably related to the sentence, "You are also boring." The little maid stood beside Bai Yunxin and didn't say anything under the firelight. The little black donkey stood behind the throne for a while and felt bored. It lowered its head and sniffed the sand. But there was no grass. It smelled some flesh and blood that splashed on it. It licked it with its tongue and slowly ate it. Then Bai Yunxin sighed, "Why do you want to be a demon? Isn't it good to be alive?" Li Yunxin thought for a while. What happened? Bai Yunxin stood up. Her real body was probably a crane. It was known for its slender elegance. Therefore her human body was also longer. She wore a white dress and walked slowly on the bloody beach. She put her hands behind her and lowered her head. She looked like an ordinary girl walking in the night wind. She walked a few steps and turned to look at Li Yunxin. I'm the adopted daughter of King Rock. Do you know that? Li Yunxin walked slowly to her and walked side by side with her on the beach. I know. Dao Tong is going to war with demons. Bai Yunxin looked at Li Yunxin slightly. The breeze with the smell of blood brushed her cheek and a strand of hair passed her lips. This made her look a little decadent and blurred, but her eyes were bright and sparkling. People of Daotong set up a lot of magic circles outside the city of Wei. They probably need the yang qi of hundreds of thousands of people in the city of Wei in magic circles to destroy the inhibition of Dongting. Yang qi in magic circles of hundreds of thousands of people. Li Yunxin followed her words and thought for a while. It's equivalent to a full blow from a cultivator in the state of Guangxing in mystery? It's still a bit difficult to destroy the inhibition of Dongting with this kind of power. Bai Yunxin still didn't answer him directly. She said again, my adoptive father asked me to take something. I'll leave immediately after I take it, because this inhibition is not as strong as you think. The Taoist outside has set it up. This place can't be defended. Li Yunxin was slightly stunned. You come to take the dragon's soul? Yes. My adoptive father is King Rock. He is the master of all feathers in the world. Bai Yunxin said softly, Shinryu is the most respected demon in the world. But my adoptive father is not a subordinate of Shinryu but an ally. When demons and Daotong fight, Shinryu needs my adoptive father's help. But my adoptive father doesn't want to be involved in this matter. So, Li Yunxin thought for a while. He intends to do something else and pay some other price in exchange for his transcendental status outside. Bai Yunxin smiled slightly. It's easy to talk to you. It was the first time for Li Yunxin to see her smile like this. It was a smile without any malice, just to release kindness or emotion. This made him feel more abnormal. Bai Yunxin must have something else in her mind. Then you come to take the dragon's soul to ensure that it doesn't fall into the hands of Daotong people. It's a favor to Shinryu, but why doesn't Shinryu do it himself? Why doesn't Dragon's son do it himself? It's hard for you to answer. Li Yunxin frowned. Is that the only thing? There's more. There are not many big demons, you are a big demon now. The true dragon needed more great fiendish demons. But there are differences among demons in the same realm. Dragons are the strongest. Bai Yunxin breathed a sigh of relief. Shinryu needs more dragons. Li Yunxin stopped. After a moment of silence he said, Don't tell me, there are also such things as marriage among the demons? Bai Yunxin turned around and looked at him. Why not? You and Shinryu? With Dragon's son. Li Yunxin was silent for a while and said, Who? Not you. Bai Yunxin smiled. You said I was a good friend before, but I know you were lying. I'm not like the Red Lady who can be easily deceived like that. The first time you were afraid that I would kill you. The second time you wanted to use me. Now you probably want to ask me how to get in and out of Dongting. My foster father told me these things in detail. I think it makes sense. Now I'm just here to tell you how to get out of Dongting. I thought you were interesting before. Although you are boring now, you have helped me out. After Bai Yunxin said this, she suddenly leaned close to him and whispered something in his ear. It reminded Li Yunxin of the first time he met Bai Yunxin in the forest. After whispering, her soft breath still existed. Bai Yunxin didn't say a word. She just waved her sleeves and rolled up the demon wind. She took her donkey and went straight to the sky. Those words were to tell him how to get out of Dongting. The way was simple, but he just became a demon and no one told him. Li Yunxin stood still for a while, but the little maid didn't leave. It seemed that she wanted to say something but didn't know whether she should say it or not. She suddenly looked at Li Yunxin and then at the direction where her lady escaped. After repeating this several times, she sighed and stamped her feet. She was about to escape too. Li Yunxin said, "Please wait." His words were like a life-saving straw. The maid breathed a sigh of relief and stood down. Li Yunxin stepped on the pool of blood on the beach and approached her. He cupped his hands and saluted, "Miss, you saved me before. I haven't thanked you yet. What's your name?" The maid didn't want to be polite to him. She first looked at the direction where Bai Yunxin escaped and then got closer to Li Yunxin. She stared at him with her eyes wide open. "Do you know why my lady asked you that you were boring and why she asked you, it's not good to be alive?" Li Yunxin cupped his hands again. "I'm about to ask you about this." The maid sighed, "Alas. I heard that you are very famous in the city of Wei recently. Why do you look so stupid now? Let me ask you, you have seen a lot of demons and you have become a demon yourself. Have you ever heard of a big demon couple?" Li Yunxin was stunned for a while and then realized what the maid meant. For a long time he had never heard of a demon couple. Two demons who got married and lived together. Red Lady and Du Sheng were husband and wife, but Red Lady said that she didn't touch him after the secret marriage. Du Sheng was not a real demon. He frowned and asked, "I haven't heard of it. Why is that?" The maid stared at him as if she wanted to see his reaction after hearing the following words. "You know that demons are not human. When people marry and become pregnant, a child will be born. Demons marry. Demons of the same kind naturally get pregnant and have parents to raise them. But there are so few demons in the world and they all have different levels of cultivation. How can there be so many demons of the same kind? Just like how he is a green ox that attained the Tao, she is a lioness that attained the Tao. The two get married and turn into human beasts. The green bull's demonic power and essence enter the lioness body and form a baby with the lioness's demonic power. But the baby is neither a green bull nor a lioness. We only know that it is a demon fetus. Who knows where it comes from? Such a thing must collide with the demonic power of the lioness. The bigger the demon fetus grows, the weaker its mother will be. The day it's born will be the day of its mother's death. Are you listening or not?" The maid couldn't help but be anxious when she said this. Because she looked at Li Yunxin as she spoke, but found that his expression was calm, and she couldn't see any emotional fluctuation. After a while, she saw Li Yunxin take a step back and said softly, "Oh, so that's it. This kind of thing. No wonder your miss is too shy to talk about it." Seeing him like this, the maid was disappointed in her heart. Hearing him say this, he added 3 more points. In the end, he revealed his true nature as a demon and became angry. She suddenly raised her eyebrows. "Li Yunxin, you're really something." She didn't know what to say after saying this. After a long time, she said, "Do you think my miss wants to say it but doesn't want to say it?" "Bah. She doesn't want to say it. I thought you were a human and had a conscience, so I told you." Li Yunxin laughed. "Conscience? How can a demon have a conscience?" After saying this, the maid was finally completely disappointed. She seemed to want to kill Li Yunxin according to her temper, but she knew she was no match for him. She wanted to scold him, but she felt that she would be a joke if she got angry at this kind of person. Her heart was mixed with emotions and she actually cried. 2 big tears fell into the pool of blood. She stomped her feet and followed her miss. Only Li Yunxin was left in the same place. Against the sky full of fire, he gradually frowned. Chapter 240. He thinks quietly for a moment and doesn't say anything. He just stands up again and goes straight to Mount June. He lands in the middle of the mountain at the square of the nave and goes straight to the west. The east side of the square is a cliff and the west side is a green forest. There are rockery pavilions in the middle and few people go there. He walks into the forest and doesn't rush to do business. Instead, he takes out some paper and a magic brush from his folding fan. Both Daotong and the School of Painting need these two things. However, it doesn't mean that they can't use their skills without them. Usually, some small skills only need hand gestures and incantations. When they fight, they usually burn the written and painted magic figures. When they really need to use paper and brush, it is during the preparation before the war and when they set up the magic circle. Li Yunxin has the body of a demon dragon and is extremely powerful. Usually, he can solve many problems with only brute force. Therefore, these days he doesn't even realize that the skills of the School of Painting are slowly becoming useless. Now he takes out these things again, spreads the paper in the air and holds the magic brush to paint. Only then does he realize that his breath is a little bit blocked when he writes. His thoughts are not as smooth as before. Thinking about it carefully, he almost hasn't had a good rest these days. His parents taught him the art of cultivation. Now he says he is in the real state, but in terms of skills, he is probably just the same as when he was in the city of Wei, far better than those painting Taoists in the same state of the transcendent state. However, there is still a long way to go before he reaches the real state. With this idea to remind himself, he makes a few magic figures. Then he puts away the paper and brush and strolls in the forest. With the help of hand gestures and incantations, he takes out all the magic figures. There is no change in the forest. The canopy still covers the sky. He can't see the moon and stars. There is no sound of insects in the forest. However, there are endless wacken flowing on the treetops and branches. Occasionally there are some flying lights. It is a common phenomenon that neither Li Yunxin nor his parents have carefully studied. Now he takes out his folding fan and floats it in front of him with Reiki. Bai Yunxin tells him how to get out of Dongting. Almost all demons with high Taoism have a temporary palace. In Li Yunxin's eyes, it was similar to a storage bag or a space bag. When a demon's demonic power reaches a certain level, along with some incense's power of will, it can condense into something like that. It doesn't have a fixed shape, it comes from the deepest level of one's heart's desire. Some people might have a barrel, some a rock, and some a sword. The palace was small. If his dermic powers were stronger, he would grow bigger and become a dragon palace. The term temporary residence was understandable, but the term dragon palace made Li Yunxin a little confused. Since all the demons in the world might have such a thing, why was it crowned with the word dragon? It was probably related to Shinryu in some way. Now that the dragon palace was completed, people could enter. Lord Dongting's Red Flower City was like this, and so was Li Yunxin's folding fan. However, there was still a crucial point. The dragon palace was like a house. Master entered the dragon palace through the front door. The house had a back door. The dragon palace also had a back door. But the back door had to be opened by himself. And the method of opening the back door sounded even more unusual to Li Yunxin. When he was first told about this, he already felt like it was a strange system created by someone. But now this feeling was even stronger. You have to enter your own dragon palace, choose a location and open the back door. From then on, no matter where you are, as long as you enter the dragon palace and leave through the back door, you will return to the location you chose before. But this method couldn't be used often. According to Bai Yunxin, that was the place where the spiritual power of the dragon palace leaked out. If it was used frequently, it might cause the dragon palace to collapse, which wasn't worth it. The matter was clear and distinct from the point of view of the rules. But the problem was, as a demon's method, it wasn't very mystical. This made Li Yunxin think of some low-level and crude setting, without any reason or explanation. It's just like that, with some restrictions. This, together with some small details before, often made him feel an unknown fear from the bottom of his heart. There might be some secret hidden in this strange world. But based on what he knew now, those secrets probably weren't gentle and beautiful. He wasn't afraid of facing danger, but he was afraid of not knowing where the danger might be, which made him feel uneasy. So he tried to suppress this little bit of uneasiness in his heart. The next moment he disappeared from the forest. He appeared in his dragon palace. Just like the last time he came here, this place was full of mist. In the past there were some scattered objects and food inside. But a few days ago they were used up to deal with Su Wang. Li Yunxin didn't like this feeling. A lot of things could be hidden in the mist, which made him feel like he was being watched. It wasn't a good sign that the situation was out of his control, so he tried his best to avoid it. The last time he came here, this dragon palace was still full of white mist. He couldn't tell up from down, left from right, and there were no boundaries. But when he entered this time, he was taken aback. Something was here. A small world appeared in the mist, like a dense forest. The trees in the forest were towering, verdant and verdant. The forest was decorated with all kinds of flowers and plants, and colorful butterflies were flying. The dragon palace was very quiet. He could even hear the melodious chirping of birds. Li Yunxin looked at the world from a strange perspective. He was like a creator looking down from the sky. So he could see an open space in the forest, and on the open space, there was a courtyard with 2 entrances. The courtyard looked very dilapidated, with weeds growing between the courtyard and the gaps between the tiles. It looked familiar. Li Yunxin quickly realized that he had indeed seen that courtyard and been to that courtyard. Wasn't that the courtyard that Su Wing showed him where Lu Laodao, Shirquizi and Sanhua were trapped? It was actually in his dragon palace. This surprise made him subconsciously walk toward the courtyard. With this thought, the scenery quickly zoomed in. The next moment he was already standing outside the courtyard. When he looked up at the sky, he found that there was no sun in the sky, but the sun was shining brightly. Everywhere he looked there was mist, probably the kind of mist in his dragon palace. He raised his hand to touch the door in front of him, and immediately felt the texture of the rotten wood and the scratching of the paint on the door. Li Yunxin took a deep breath and pushed the door open. With a squeak, he saw the courtyard full of weeds and 2 people standing in the courtyard. Black Knife Juren stared at him as if he had seen a ghost. Lu Laodao noticed Black Knife's gaze and slowly turned his face to look at him. He was about to speak. As for the people in the courtyard, Lu Laodao just realized that there might be something wrong here. Black Knife had just woken up from a hallucination that lasted more than 10 days. He once again remembered what the fake Lu Laodao had said. Chapter 241. Before the old man who once lived with Li Yunxin in the Dragon King Temple in City of Wei spoke, Li Yunxin had already walked through the door. Just like when he was in City of Wei, he pushed open the door and came back from the street at dusk. He did certain things and met certain people. Lu Laodao did not know what he was planning, but he did not ask. He only told him how much sesame oil money was spent today, and which old woman came to ask if he had a sweetheart. A smile appeared on his face as he walked into the courtyard. He stared at old Taoist Lu and looked at him carefully and seriously. He let out a long breath. Good. It's me now and you're you. I'm here to take you out. He and Lu Laodao had not been apart for more than a month, but he felt that a lot of time had passed. However, neither of them liked to express their emotions, so they were calmer when they met each other, as if they had already expected this situation. But there were always people who were not calm enough. Juren, the Black Knife, rushed forward and stared at Li Yunxin. I've brought him here. But we lost some more. He immediately felt sorry. He first looked behind Li Yunxin and then looked around at the people in the courtyard. Do you know something strange happened? You're a person who knows Taoism. Can you tell me what's going on? Juren's behavior was abrupt and abnormal. The expression on his face did not look like that of an ordinary person either. It was more like something went wrong in his practice or something was wrong with his brain. Li Yunxin slightly frowned and looked at Lu Laodao. Lu Laodao went forward and comforted Juren with a few words, then briefly told Li Yunxin what had just happened. However, Black Knife thought that he was not being detailed enough, so he quickly took the lead and poured out everything he had seen. His expression was urgent, and his tone was rapid, as if he were not speaking words, but poison forced into his body, and the sooner it was poured out, the better. Li Yunxin listened attentively and saw a few familiar faces, Wu Su, Lily and Yu Meng, appear in the courtyard. But now he was not the person who hid his identity in the City of Wei. People knew that he was a demon, a deity, or the Wei River Dragon King, and their gazes towards him were 3 parts respectful and 4 parts fearful. Even if he had a lot of things to say, he couldn't just walk up, bow and open his mouth like that. Just like that, Li Yunxin listened to everything Juren said. Then she grabbed his left wrist and pulled him in front of her. She took out a talisman from nowhere and slapped it on Juren's forehead. The talisman spontaneously combusted when it came into contact with the wind, but the flame was fleeting, only burning a few strands of hair. Juren was defenseless in front of him, like a weak scholar in the marketplace. After all this happened, he tried to break free and step back. Li Yunxin let go of him. Then he said, "Someone planted something in your spiritual consciousness so that you could pass it to me. Now I've helped you remove it, otherwise you would go crazy. Think again, the appearance of the old man, is it like this?" He raised his hand and drew in the air, and a lifelike figure appeared in the air. Juren had no time to be amazed by this magical ability, he just stared at it and said, "Yes." Li Yunxin was silent for a while, then nodded slightly, "Su Wang." After a while he said, "What a great ability. Su Wing sent these people into his dragon palace, and even opened a back door for his dragon palace. Lu Laodao, Sanhua, and even Ing Juren came in through the back door. This kind of thing was like opening the door at night and coming home to find that the house was full of beautiful gifts, and at the same time the back door was opened. The gifts were not lost and there was even a surprise. But for a normal person, there was only surprise without joy. In Li Yunxin's eyes, this kind of thing was like a demonstration. After all, a demon's temporary imperial residence, the Dragon Palace, was the most secretive place. Logically, no one should be able to break in. Lu Laodao realized that something was wrong, so he came closer and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong?" Li Yunxin thought again, then said, "The door was broken into." At this moment he had already walked into the courtyard, and the door was open behind him. The people in the courtyard didn't know what he meant by, "the door was broken into," but after hearing Ing Juren's words, they all thought that Black Saber's cultivation had gone awry, and he had fallen into chi deviation or was hallucinating. But now, seeing Li Yunxin's attitude, they knew that what Black Knife said might be true. For a moment they were a little anxious, not knowing what other unimaginable things would happen in this unimaginable world. But there was no more unimaginable things. After saying this, Li Yunxin turned around and walked out through the door again. Then he stood outside the door and waved at them, saying softly, "Come out." The people did not know why or where he was going. But Lu Laodao was the first to step out of the door. When they were in the courtyard, the sky was bright. Although they did not know where the sunlight came from, it was at least a sunny day. But now, as soon as they stepped out of this dilapidated courtyard, it was pitch black in front of them. Lu Laodao subconsciously grabbed Brother Xian's sleeve, and it took him a while to adapt to the darkness. After a while he found that the world was not completely dark. He was in a forest and there were light spots like fireflies flowing on the leaves. He felt the moist wind and there was a slight fishy smell in the wind. Li Yunxin smiled and said, "It's Mount June. There's a restriction formation blocking it, so it's safe." When he said this, Madame Gong slowly walked out, but Li Yunxin still said to Lu Laodao, "There's another person on Mount June, Red Lady. Maybe Bai Yunxin will also come. Red Lady, you've heard me talk about her. In a moment you go down the stairs to the front hall at the corner of the mountain. But there's nothing in there. You guys think of a way. Don't eat the fish and do whatever you want." He was telling them something. Hearing this, Lu Laodao was a little flustered, but he didn't let go of his sleeve. "Brother Xian, what about you?" When they walked out and looked back, they could no longer see the courtyard in the world. There was nothing in the forest. In fact, they walked out of Li Yunxin's folding fan. At this moment, Li Yunxin also looked at the folding fan in his hand, and then looked up at the west side of the forest. The west side was close to the square in front of the Ziwei Palace. He saw someone standing in the forest. That should be Red Lady. The princess in the lake didn't seem to care too much about the arrival of these people, but of course she didn't welcome them either. He and Red Lady looked at each other for a while in the dark forest, and then he turned to Lu Laodao and said, "I'll go out and have a look. I'll be back soon." He said this a little loudly so the person in the west should have heard him. So that person slowly walked away. Then Li Yunxin waved the folding fan in his hand, he disappeared into thin air. Chapter 242. He only says, "Go out and have a look." Others probably think he is going to the lake or outside Mount June. But when he shows up again, he is already in another forest. More than 10 days ago, Ing Juren and Yu Ming were thrown into the fog here and entered his dragon palace. The rat and the rabbit only think it is an inhibition, so they wander outside. They don't know that if they also went in they can reunite. Now, someone opened the back door of his dragon palace here. That person is Su Wang. What a great ability. Li Yunxin sighs again in such a deep night. Since a long time ago, Bai Yanjun has expressed something similar to him. Some people are helping him. But that kind of help was not entirely out of unwarranted kindness. They are more like giving a person or some people some conditions and convenience to see how far they can go. Su Wang also shows the same idea. But they are all different. Li Yunxin doesn't know what kind of connection can bring them together, let alone what their purpose is. All he can do is to make use of those things to survive and strengthen himself as much as possible, hoping, from a possible chess piece to a decision-maker who can see the whole situation. A few days ago he was trapped in Dongting and didn't know how to solve the dangerous situation in front of him. Even if he had thousands of plans, it would be in vain if he couldn't break the inhibition. Now he finally gets out of trouble. The fog that used to linger here has disappeared. Li Yunxin gently tiptoes and floats on the branch like a shadow. He points on the branch again and jumps up between the branches and leaves. Finally he stands on the dense forest. He steps on a green leaf. The green leaf shakes with the wind and he also shakes with the wind. Looking to the south, it is a boundless wild forest. The forest in the dark is quietly dormant on the Weishui plain, like a gloomy ocean. Small sounds in the forest interweave into its deep and loud breathing. Nobody knows how many secrets are hidden in the shadow. He looks to the north again and sees the city of Wei. He has only been trapped in Dongting for more than 20 days, but it feels like a whole year. Even the city of Wei, just looking at him made him feel like a stranger. In fact, they were indeed strangers. The city of Wei in the past. The city of Wei at night, although there were lights that represented civilization, it was far from comparable to the world he came from. But now, the whole city of Wei was splendid and splendid. The city was so bright that even Li Yunxin's face, which was dozens of miles away from it, turned slightly red. The city of Wei was burning. Li Yunxin stood at the top of a tall tree and stared at the city he had lived in for a few months. Then he silently jumped down from the tree. A ball of mist appeared under the tree, and Li Yunxin was hidden in it. At the same time, he reappears in the woods on the west side of the middle hall of Ziwei Palace inside the inhibition of Dongting. He casually picked up his folding fan from somewhere. At this time, the people he had just rescued had just walked into the square in front of the nave. He had to take care of these secular people. So the candle in the room was lit. Lu Laodao, Mrs. Sanhua, Shirquizi, who was in a coma. Yumeng, Wusu, Lily, and Ingjuren. They were standing or sitting, but none of them showed special interest in the nave, probably because they were restless. Li Yunxin sat on a table in the hall. Originally, this table was a retro gift and was used as a table. But now he was not in the mood to sit on his knees behind the table obediently. For a person who had not knelt according to that rule since he was a teenager, that posture was indeed a kind of punishment. The hall was wide and deep. The candle only illuminated a small space in the hall, and most of it was hidden in the darkness. Maybe these people felt the same at this time, so they looked at Li Yunxin with some panic in their eyes. Li Yunxin sighed. He put his hands on his knees and leaned forward slightly to look at them, saying, "I understand. The situation is not very optimistic and you are not happy." He looked at Lu Laodao and Sanhua, nodding first. "Thank you for your hard work. Previously you did a good job. I could only survive because of you. Now the chief and pheasant can't be found. If they are alive or dead, I will definitely give you an explanation." Then he looked at Ingjuren. "I didn't expect you to really come. But I didn't expect so many things to happen, and the city of Wei is finished. Without the city of Wei, are you interested in becoming pirates?" Ingjuren did not know whether they were serious or joking, and did not know how to reply. He had seen Li Yunxin's ability, and now that he came to such a place, he felt that it was as magnificent as a royal palace, although he had never seen a royal palace, so he was anxious and did not know what they meant by, "the city of Wei is finished." Then he saw Li Yunxin and cupped his hands to Yumeng. "Master Yu, we are fated to meet. I have news. Just now I saw the city of Wei was set on fire." Yumeng and Wu Suli were stunned. Then they heard Li Yunxin say, "It's not a fire, it's set on fire. You know, even the city walls are on fire. Probably the stinky Taoists of Daotong are setting up some array, and also sacrificing the city of Wei. These people, what they do is even worse than me." They did not know what Yumeng was thinking, but Wu Su and Lily were first shocked, and then they did not know how they felt. Although it was impossible for a super big family like the Yu family to live in the city of Wei, and there would be branches in other countries and cities. But the main family was gone, and the rest could not be considered as the Yu family. Those who were independent, and those who were finished, their young master's Yu family, was really gone. But the city of Wei was where they grew up. Suddenly hearing Li Yunxin say that the city was destroyed, the two girls only felt slightly bitter, and for a moment they thought of the beautiful times when they were young in the city. But Wu Su first sighed, "Alas! I hate those people." That night, Li Yunxin already knew what happened in the city. Hearing her words, he knew that she wanted to say, "I hate the Yu family is finished, the city of Wei is finished," but the people that night didn't get their retribution. He smiled, "There's no need to hate. They're already dead. I looked into the city, and saw the sky full of grievances turned into spiritual energy. Without hundreds of thousands of casualties, there would not be such a big battle." He looked at the two girls and then at Yumeng. "The people you hate are also dead." Hearing this, Yumeng's face finally showed obvious surprise. "You mean, how?" Wu Su and Lily were stunned for a longer time. When her young master finished speaking, she cried out in shock, How could this be? Thinking for a moment she asked, aren't they afraid of this? Li Yunxin did not answer this question but stood up and paced a few steps. Then he asked, Master Yu, now that things have come to this, what are your plans? Yu Meng had always been in low spirits and seemed to have no interest in anything. When she first met Li Yunxin she was a completely different person. Hearing Li Yunxin's question she slowly raised her head, looked at him for a while and said, I just want to know, that day when I saved you by the roadside and then brought you into the city, did you deliberately harm my family? Li Yunxin thought for a moment, I didn't mean to harm your family. Wu Su and Lily frowned and wanted to ask further. But Li Yunxin continued. For example, your family does business and sells cloth. You want to go to the city of Hun to monopolize the market, so you want to take over a few big shops, and then lower the prices so that the small shops either go bankrupt or invest. In the end, you might even be kind enough to help those bankrupt merchants. At least you didn't force them to a dead end. For those small merchants you didn't mean to harm them. He looked at Yu Meng. You should know, if you think about how they will live when you do things, what they will eat and where in the future, you won't succeed. Hearing this, Wu Su and Lily frowned even more. They wanted to question him again, but he continued to speak. He even smiled, but that's not what I want to say. In this case the Yu family is me. You want to monopolize the market, that's what I want to do in the city of Wei. But your family can't compete with those small shops. As for you, you are the smaller peddlers and pawns who relied on those small shops to survive after they went bankrupt. I may know what will happen to the small shops, but I'm sorry, I really don't know what will happen to those small merchants. He sighed. Sometimes you say, the affairs of the immortals. Now you are involved in the affairs of the immortals. Lily finally spoke after a moment of silence. But, that's our family, Li Yunxin nodded. I understand. After all, that's your home. Killing a random thief by the roadside, he is also an extremely important person to many people. If you look carefully, everyone is important and alive, to themselves. But the problem is, you still don't understand what affairs of the immortals means. Ordinary people probably couldn't follow Li Yunxin's train of thought, so Yu Meng and the two girls didn't speak immediately. On the contrary, Ingjuren couldn't help but say, Humph. You are good at seizing those poor people. But at this time, don't you care? Li Yunxin paced 2 steps and stood still. He looked at the 4 secular people and said slowly, it may be hard to understand, but let me explain it to you. According to you, when the Taoist priests of Daotong came to your house, your master went to welcome them. At that time he was still thinking about how to bargain. Li Yunxin sighed slightly. Your master is a first-class figure in the city of Wei, but he already knew that he couldn't refuse those people. So he only thought about how to get some benefits and take advantage of some power. He should have never thought that he would be killed. In his eyes it was impossible, beyond his common sense. Chapter 243. Then your family had that kind of thing happen. You all started to feel that it was unbelievable. At that time, did you ever think of going to the capital to find some nobleman to help you? Li Yunxin looked at Yu Meng and shook his head. I don't think so. Because they knew the noblemen in the capital probably couldn't help. They were immortals. But you still didn't expect that they didn't even care about the people in the city of Weiqing. Just like what you want to ask, how could they not care? How could they do that? But these questions are very unreasonable. Li Yunxin was silent for a while. There is no justice in the world now. To you, justice is in the court. But the court is supported by people from Daotong and Kenzo. Now the immortals don't care about justice, what can the court do? So you see, something happened in the city of Weiqing. The magistrate of the Zhao family ran away. The court didn't send anyone to help. Because they knew it was Daotong and Kenzo's business, they didn't dare to interfere. Now that the city is destroyed, they also don't dare to interfere, because Daotong and Kenzo want to protect the people. And now, so many people of the world were being sacrificed. This must be for the sake of protecting the people of the world. This kind of thing. Li Yunxin shook his head slightly. The more people die, the more righteous it is. Because in your hearts, the authority of the emperor will not do evil. And in the hearts of the emperors, the highest authority of Daotong will not do evil. Whether they are willing or not, once evil is committed, the perpetrator will be the victim. Do you understand what I'm saying? Wu Su and Lily didn't quite understand the meaning of Li Yunxin's words, and didn't know what to say. Ingjuren felt he understood a little, but the truth and logic was so scary that he felt hopeless, and didn't know what to say. Only Yu Meng seemed to understand. He looked at Li Yunxin and pondered for a long time before asking, In that case, if we help you in the future, we will be doing something of the greatest importance. His words made Li Yunxin smile. It was a smile that came from the bottom of his heart, a smile that came when he saw a smart person. It's the biggest thing. Li Yunxin let out a sigh of relief. It's the biggest thing in the world of immortals. I'm considered an immortal now. Now they were going against Dao Tong. In this world, you will not find a more brilliant, more powerful opponent. There is no justice or justice in this world for your family's matters. If you work for me in the future, you will be going against the justice and justice of the world. If you don't have it, you can try to rob it like this. If I can't get it, there's nothing. Only if we can snatch it will we have an explanation. But what is more important is that this is more frightening than anything else. Because all your grievances, sufferings, injustices, and bullying, you can't find anything to rely on. You don't even have anything to rely on. Because you are going against the laws of this world. Yu Ming listened to Li Yunxin in a daze. After listening, he pondered for a while as if he was making a serious decision. Then he said, "People like us are at our wits' end. My father was killed by Dao Tong. In the future we will be in danger wherever we go. We won't be able to live a peaceful life anymore." Then he looked at Ing Juren. "This Black Blade hero, I guess you didn't live a happy life in the past. As the saying goes, seeking wealth comes from taking risks. If I want to follow you, I won't be surprised. But you are such a powerful person. It's not impossible for you to live a happy life by hiding your identity. Why do you want to do such a dangerous thing?" Ing Juren snorted in a low voice and raised his eyebrows. But he didn't refute Yu Meng's words. No one in the world could refute the evaluation of the Yu family of living a happy life. Unexpectedly, Li Yunxin suddenly laughed out loud. His laughter almost made the table tremble. He laughed for a while and then said, "Live a happy life? What kind of happy life are you talking about?" Li Yunxin seemed to be talking about a very funny thing. Traveling around the world with beautiful women is your happy life. But in my opinion, the most educated and reasonable women here don't even have the common sense of a primary school student. There are some interesting demons, but do you expect them to hide their identity like me? Scenery? The scenery in the world is not strange or magnificent in my eyes. Knowledge is still the same. Maybe something that a primary school student said casually is enough for you to take hundreds or thousands of years of science and technology seriously. Not to mention movies, TV games, sports, popular songs, the sky and the universe. In fact, I have always wondered, those people who went to ancient times to get married and have children, wouldn't the feeling of falling behind in their hearts drive them crazy? How can I put myself in their shoes and feel at ease? Now I finally know. I can't put myself in their shoes and feel at ease. So in this world, in this boring world, for me, what else is there that is really unknown and new? Li Yunxin spread his hands. Cultivation. Gods, demons, wild and unconstrained, these are the only reasons why I don't go crazy in this world. If I really hide my identity and live a happy life in your way, I might as well die. Yu Ming didn't really understand what he said. But Lu Laodao understood most of it. Laodao had been listening to Brother Xian talking to them. He was still listening now. But he felt he understood him better, the world he used to live in. Our world? Yu Ming frowned. What does that mean? Those words just now seemed to pour out Li Yunxin's passion. At this moment he became uninterested again. So he just smiled. It's like you have lived at home for more than 10 years, and now you suddenly have to go to the countryside to spend the rest of your life. Would you like that? Yu Ming thought for a while. If I can get my revenge, do you know the life in the countryside? Li Yunxin laughed. It's the life in the countryside, not the life of a country gentleman. You only light the oil lamp during festivals. You work at sunrise and rest at sunset. You don't have 3 meals a day and you only have 1 set of clothes every year. No one talks about martial arts and literature with you, and no one talks about history and romance with you. You just have to spend the rest of your life alone in a mud house. Would you like that? Brother Xian, look at this place. Is it really like this? Lu Laodao couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He never thought that the prosperous world in his heart was such a terrible and destitute life in Li Yunxin's eyes. Yu Ming was stunned at first, then he frowned. Is the world really like this in your eyes? If you really think it's so unbearable, maybe only the reincarnation of a deva would have such a thought. He wasn't being sarcastic, but he could only find such an appropriate analogy. Unexpectedly, Li Yunxin smiled. Just take it as it is. Everyone was stunned by his attitude. If it was an ordinary secular person who said this, everyone would think it was a joke and was pretending to be profound. But for a person like Li Yunxin to say this, no one knew if it was true or not. Li Yunxin finished speaking and sat down again, waiting for Yu Meng's reply. Yu Meng thought for a while, then asked, "But since you are a deity, you should know that us secular people are as insignificant as ants to Daotong. Why would you waste so much time talking about me? I heard that you all have the ability to turn stone into gold and ride on clouds. The wealth in the secular world to you is not that important, right?" But Wu Su and Lily knew that her young master's words meant that he really had some thoughts. He wanted to seriously make a decision. But the two girls didn't have a particularly good impression of Li Yunxin. His appearance made them a little more vigilant. Because he was even more beautiful than their young master. Most people think so. Li Yunxin nodded. The people of Daotong don't care about you secular people. After all, they are elites and their vision is limited by history and times. But here, I know that the power of the people is the strongest. It's hard to explain and you won't understand even if I explain. But you only need to know that to the demons, you will become more and more useful in the coming era. Yu Meng didn't understand what he said, but he understood his attitude. This time he didn't ask any questions but fell into deep thought. After waiting for a while, Yu Meng raised his head and looked at Li Yunxin seriously. "I understand your attitude. But I can't completely trust you. But I can tell you one thing, the Yu family hasn't been destroyed. Families like us will make some preparations in advance to prevent the worst from happening," Yu Meng said. "The Yu family does too." Li Yunxin smiled. "I understand. Did your father tell you about this before?" Yu Meng paused. "Not yet. As a rule, I did not know of such things until the day I had a son. But I heard about it when I was a child. I was just 4 days old." Wu Su and Lily widened their eyes in surprise. Juren also turned to look at young Master Yu in surprise. But Li Yunxin didn't change his expression. He only said, "It sounds like you're reincarnated by a deity." Yu Meng looked at Li Yunxin. "Even if it's true, I can't remember what happened in my previous life. Maybe I'm just smarter than normal children. Normal children won't be possessed by a deity." Li Yunxin carefully looked at Yu Meng, as if he wanted to see through him with his eyes. Then he casually waved his hand. "Reincarnating and gaining intelligence early is more than you can imagine. It's just that you don't know. Let's not talk about these things." "Then what?" "Then I want to leave this place and use all the manpower and resources," Yu Meng said in a deep voice. "Might take a long time. But it's also a good time to walk around and think about whether I should help you or not." "Okay." Li Yunxin agreed without hesitation. Then he thought for a while. "Just a casual question. You're different from before. Is it because you were pretending before, or because you suddenly gained intelligence recently?" "One thing," Yu Meng said stiffly. Li Yunxin smiled. "Then please, I want to talk to my people about something private." Chapter 244. Yu Meng was stunned for a moment. The Yu family seldom talked with people in such a direct way, not to mention driving people out immediately after the discussion. But he didn't expect that Li Yunxin was more wicked than he thought. After saying this, he waved his sleeves. Yu Meng, Wu Su and Lily were all taken into the folding fan and thrown back to the small world. Then Li Yunxin looked at Juren. "What's your plan from now on?" Juren was still in a daze because of the scene just now. Now hearing his question, he hurriedly said, "Well, a gentleman's word, okay. Then you are one of us." Li Yunxin waved his hand casually. "Then let's talk business. Come in." The last sentence was said without any rhyme or reason. But as soon as he said that, they heard a sound. A woman in red leisurely walked in. Her clothes fluttered in the void even though there was no wind. She looked like a water god. It was Hong Yangzi. They hadn't seen her before, but Li Yunxin had seen her a lot. After all, it was the old residence of the Lord Dongting. He didn't mind Hong Yangzi eavesdropping. Maybe this was the task that the Lord Dongting left for her. Who could guess the thoughts of a fiendish demon? "This is Hong Yangzi. Her father is the Lord Dongting. She is on the same boat with us." Li Yunxin paused and his face became serious. "When I told you about the situation outside the city of Wei, I made it easy. But the fact is, we have to be ready in 15 days at most. Dongting should be finished." Among these people, Lu Laodao knew Li Yunxin's speaking habits best. He was used to understating serious things. And once he really started to worry about something, it meant that it was indeed a big thing. So he took a deep breath and listened to Li Yunxin carefully. The sect master of the Langya cave is also in the city of Wei. It is said that the sect master Kuan Wuzi is someone who has a say in front of the two sages. Now the city of Wei was massacred in front of his eyes. The hundreds of thousands of people in the city were all dead. This shows that this is Dao Dong's attitude. Li Yunxin spoke very quickly, as if he was cherishing every minute and second. City of Wei is a big city, not a remote place. The massacre here shows that Dao Tong cares about the things in Dongting very much. I took a look at the tactical matrix outside the city of Wei for a while. Together with the mirror-like small magic circle outside the city you mentioned before. According to the operation of Reiki, it should be very powerful and can break the inhibition of Dongting with one blow. I previously speculated that Dao Tong wanted to use the dragon soul to declare war on the fiendish demons. It seemed that he had really made up his mind. I must have been marked there. After the inhibition is broken, I will probably be the first sacrifice. Li Yunxin thought for a while. We definitely can't sit still and wait for death. We have to run. Bai Yunxin has already come to take the dragon soul. If she really takes it, Dao Tong will just shoot blanks. But even if we can escape from Dongting, we may not be able to escape the pursuit. There may be a long distance and a long time between the city of Wei and the place we may find. So you guys brainstorm and tell me what to do. He said brainstorm, but in fact he only looked at Lu Laodao. Ingjuren may be a talented general, but he doesn't know these strange things. Only Lu Laodao has been with him for a long time, so he knows his style best. In fact, Lu Laodao knows Li Yunxin's style too well. Therefore he seems to blurt out a plan without thinking. How about, we find someone to be the scapegoat? The word scapegoat is a fashionable saying he learned from Li Yunxin. When he heard it, he felt it was 3 parts playful and 4 parts natural and unrestrained. Now he finally has a place to use it. Li Yunxin immediately smiled and pointed at him. I told you, old Lu, you understand me the best. I think so too. As for who to be the scapegoat, Miss, since you want to participate in this matter, what do you think? It is the first time for Red Lady to see Li Yunxin like this. Not the kind of gentle softness when he was hypocritical with her before, but the kind of casual and unpretentious gentleness. She is very curious why an ordinary person like Lu Laodao can make Li Yunxin like him so much. Therefore she is not very happy. Therefore she wants to be angry, but she thinks that Li Yunxin told her before that he doesn't like that kind of woman. She can only sigh in her heart. You have found a way to get out. I should be the one to teach you. But now the situation. Red Lady bites her lips. Brother Gio was supposed to be in charge of Wei River, but it is actually occupied by big and small demons. There are also some demons on the land. If you stay with people for a long time, it may be stable. We have been neighbors for hundreds of thousands of years, and we are familiar with each other. If you want to find someone, just find them. At this moment, Ingjuren has already understood what they are talking about, and then he is stunned. He thinks what kind of people are around Li Yunxin. They do wicked things and say wicked words without any psychological pressure, as if they are talking about everything under the sun. This Red Lady seemed to be a big demon. How could she sell her neighbors who had been living with her for hundreds of years? Li Yunxin is very happy, because this is part of his plan. But it is not all. He is silent for a moment and suddenly laughed to himself. What you say makes sense, but there is a more interesting way. Old Taoist Lu saw that he was in high spirits at the moment, so he played along and said, Brother Xian's idea must be even better. What is it? Li Yunxin steps up the stairs and opens his mouth happily. First, I have to let you know common sense about precipitation. Precipitation is rain. The land we live in is very, very big. Some countries are next to the sea, but more countries are inland. Our Qing kingdom is inland. So precipitation is mainly the water vapor condenses into clouds in the sky and then falls down. But far from the sea there is less water vapor, so there will be a drought. Do you understand this principle? Ingjuren also understands this principle. He thinks for a moment and says, yes. Usually the closer the water tank is, the warmer the house is. But this kind of thing like rain is not Dragon King. That is the problem I want to talk about. Li Yunxin says with a smile, and even stands up again to walk a few steps, as if he likes his new idea very much. Logically speaking, with so many places inland, there should be a drought a long time ago. But look around the city of Wei, there used to be paddy fields. This is because there are many large rivers. Another reason is the Dragon King of all the water systems in the world. The sky will make some rain by itself, and the rest is replenished by the Dragon King from different places. A little demon disguised as the so-called Dragon King may enjoy 3 animals and only rain once a month. But there are so many Dragon Kings in the world, big and small, and the rainfall is very significant. Because of them, there is no drought. Originally, Sanhua was sitting quietly and playing with her hair, not saying a word. Hearing Li Yunxin say 3 animals, She suddenly raises her head and looks around, but found nothing, so she continues to stare blankly. Li Yunxin glances at her and continues to talk, but now Dao Tong is courting death, starting a war with the demons. They have already killed all the demons near the city of Wei, right? In the future they will also want to kill all the demons in the world. Then the problem is, if all the little demons are dead, where can they find so many monsters to make Dragon King? Without these replenishing rainfall, will the world be in a drought? If the world is in a drought, will people have no way to live? Will people agree? When he said this, the few of them suddenly came to a realization. They think this is very reasonable, but why didn't they think of it before? Li Yunxin shows off considerately, it's not your fault that you can't think of it. In this world, demons are part of the ecological chain. There are no biologists among the people of Dao Tong, and they lack basic scientific knowledge. Naturally, they can't think of the effect of removing a group of people from the ecological chain. If there's anyone else who's smarter, it's only 100 years ago that they've realized this. Lu Laodao is happy listening to his words, and feels that he has learned a lot of scientific and cultural knowledge that Brother Xian often talks about. Because of this happiness, his mind is more active, and he has a flash of inspiration. Brother Xian means, Li Yunxin smiles, tell me about it. Let's tell the world about this. When the world knows about this, Dao Tong and Kenzo will gradually lose their popularity. Although they are good at Taoism, they can't be the enemy of the world. Li Yunxin nodded, the general direction is right. But the details need to be adjusted. For example, ecological precipitation. The people of Dao Tong don't know much about it, let alone the people. It's useless to reason with them, they won't listen. So we have to let them suffer first. Let Dao Tong really get rid of the demons in the world and cause a drought, then those people will learn a lesson. But if most of the demons are dead, it's useless to learn a lesson in the future. So we have to save some and put them somewhere. In the future they will be our people and then let them out to benefit the world. And before that, Li Yunxin looked at Red Lady. We have to do as you said. We have to sell all the great fiendish demons with a bit of Tao in the vicinity to the Taoist orthodoxy. It's like killing with a borrowed knife. He pauses and smiles again, but we have to have a good reason. I propose that since we want to protect the little demons in the world that we can use, then our organization will be called the Little Demon Protection Association, or Little Demon Protection for short. Do you support it? The two people and two demons in the room look at each other, not knowing what made Li Yunxin so happy. But in the end, they feel that what he said makes sense and this strange name is also appropriate. Of course they support it. Speaking up to this point, Li Yunxin claps his hands. That's good. Then the meeting is adjourned, the specific details will be decided later. If there's anything else I'll talk to you. Hero Ing Juren responds. Li Yunxin smiles, waves his hand and puts him into the folding fan. Then he nods at Red Lady again, go and rest. Red Lady feels that his behavior tonight is a little strange, but she doesn't know what is strange. But this kind of strange attitude is better than his usual cold attitude, so she shows a beautiful smile, wants to say something but finally walks out. Sanhua doesn't seem to like to listen to these things that she can't understand. After hearing Li Yunxin's words, she jumps out of the window early, and no one knows where she went to play. Only Li Yunxin, Lu Laodao, and the unconscious Shirkuizi are left in the hall. At this time, the joy on Li Yunxin's face dissipates. He first walks to Shirkuizi's side and carefully examines her, then closes his eyes to think and turns to Lu Laodao, she's not dead yet. I have some life-suppressing methods and talismans here. Although she won't wake up after using them, her condition won't worsen. If you are willing, I can give it a try. Maybe we can find a way in the future. She is a mortal without any foundation. If her cultivation is more profound, it will be easier. Lu Laodao nods silently. Li Yunxin solemnly and seriously drew in the void, using a beam of golden light to subdue the woman. Then he stands up, looks at Lu Laodao and sighs, I'm really sorry. It's all because of me. The old Taoist was not as happy as before. A few words are on the tip of his tongue, but he can't say them. In the end he only says, sigh. It's nothing. The two of them are silent for a while. Lu Laodao then looks at Li Yunxin, has anything happened recently? Of course, there are a lot of things happening recently, but Li Yunxin knows what he is talking about. The old Taoist heard him talk about the study of the mind. Although it was only a short month, he already had some understanding. He feels that Li Yunxin's mood is a little strange, not the brother Xian of the past. Li Yunxin is slightly startled, then smiles gently, you have sharp eyes. There are some things. But it's my own internal cause, it has nothing to do with others. is probably enough for me to fight in my heart. At most, I hypnotize myself. These words are said lightly, but Lu Laodao knows that things may not be so simple. However, he also knows that Brother Xian doesn't want to talk about this topic anymore, so he doesn't say it. It's something else. There were a lot of people just now I can't say. Li Yunxin stretches out his hand and takes out a talisman. Immediately an invisible force envelopes the two of them. He waits for a while and then says, "The young master of the Yu family, I don't think he is an ordinary person. So it's good that he is leaving. I'm not in the mood to solve the mystery now." Our side. Sanhua. He looks at Lu Laodao. "You know how I met her. That night in Mrs. Sanhua Temple, I know that an expert once made a real body for her. The technique also looks like someone from the painting school. But she said she can't remember anything. Her cultivation is higher than the sheriff's pheasant, but look at the sheriff's way of talking. If you don't look closely, you just think she is an ordinary woman. Sanhua is very different. Now I found a body for her, but she still talks the same, incoherent. I don't think this is what she used to look like." Li Yunxin pauses, "And that night in the alley she killed 2 Taoist priests of the same realm. She is not an unorthodox person. She should have been fighting a lot in the past, and she may even have more experience than you and me. But when I ask her again, she still says she can't remember." Lu Laodao is surprised. After thinking for a while, he says, "Brother Xen said, but I think she doesn't have bad intentions." "I don't think so either. I don't mean what you think." Li Yunxin squints his eyes and looks out of the window, "But I don't feel at ease. Now I don't know what Hong Yang is thinking, and I don't know what kind of past Sanhua has. The only person I can trust is you. I will do what I said before, but I hope you can stay here and watch these people. Maybe they didn't mean to do anything, but I don't know if they don't know some things. After this disaster, I have to figure out these things." Chapter 245. Lu Laodao knows that Brother Xen asked him to do this. He nods solemnly but adds, "I think there will be no problem." Sanhua and the 4 monsters went through the last stage in the city of Wei with them. At that time, even Lu Laodao doesn't know if Li Yunxin can get through Yunzi, but the 5 monsters never doubt him. Because of this, Lu Laodao doesn't want to see Li Yunxin's worry come true. He knows that Brother Xen likes to guess people's minds with the most evil intentions, so he tries to do the same. But in the end, he still hopes that there will be more beautiful things in this world. Li Yunxin smiles at him and says, "Then I'm going to do something." Then he floats out of the window like Sanhua. At this time the sky in the east is turning white. Li Yunxin flies in the air for 3 miles before he lowers his body and lands on the water. He takes a deep breath and shouts, "Come." After a while, a person comes out of the water. It is the blind monster Li Shan with mung-bean eyes. Previously, Li Yunxin went to find Bai Yunxin and told him to find a way to survive. Unexpectedly, Li Shan didn't escape. Although he only appeared after the matter was over, it can be seen that he has been following him secretly. He did not expect the demon to have too much courage and loyalty. Li Shan's actions were already a useful subordinate. Therefore he tells him something and asks him to gather the monsters in the lake. Now that he comes out of the water and looks happy, he knows that things are going well. Almost all the big monsters in the Dongting have been caught by him, so those small monsters must obey his orders. Li Yunxin listens to him talking about the situation in the lake, and he has some ideas in his mind. According to Li Shan, Bai Yunxin and her servant girl had been wandering in the lake all this time. This makes Li Yunxin a little surprised. Bai Yunxin wants to get the dragon soul, so he can't say, "Then let me go and have a look." Therefore he only thinks that the dragon soul is affected and there must be a strange phenomenon in the lake. At that time he can go and have a look. He doesn't know where the dragon soul is, but since Bai Yunxin is here, she must know. But after hearing Li Shan's words, Bai Yunxin actually didn't have a clue. In his plan, getting the dragon soul from Bai Yunxin is an important part, so he can't make any mistakes. Therefore he decides to have a talk with her. Although the water nationality in Dongting is not powerful, they are still the aborigines in the lake. They are more well-informed. Li Yunxin asked Li Shan and knew where Bai Yunxin was at this moment. She then rode her cloud and headed there. When the sun rose, he finally found traces of Bai Yunxin. She and her maid stop on a small island in the lake. The black donkey is walking and chewing among the plants. The 2 witches spread a blanket on the grass and there are some food on the blanket. They are having breakfast. They look like ordinary maids going out for a walk. Li Yunxin, on the other hand, felt that her actions were extremely interesting. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that this demoness was an interesting person. But now was not the time to enjoy these leisurely and carefree feelings. He lands on the cloud and stops 4 or 5 steps away from Bai Yunshin. He asks her, "Miss Bai, didn't you want to get the dragon soul? How did it become a lake to her?" Bai Yunshin looks at him and doesn't say anything. She just slowly bites a light green mung bean cake in her hand. The maid rolls her eyes at Li Yunshin. "It's none of your business. After all, they are comrades in arms and friends. I have to care about them." Li Yunshin slowly approaches them. He looks at Bai Yunshin and sits down on the other side of the blanket. The maid doesn't look happy. But seeing that her mistress doesn't say anything, she just snorts. Li Yunshin reaches out to pick up a mung bean cake and takes a bite. Then his expression changes. He has never eaten such a disgusting thing. He doesn't know which hawker made it. But Bai Yunshin can eat it. Not only can she eat it, but she also eats 2 pieces. Then she stops and uses a white handkerchief to wipe her hands. She asks the maid, "Where did you buy this?" The maid thinks for a while. "It should be in Ping City. Miss, do you remember? That day was the sacrifice festival. We went to the evening market and saw a girl selling this. You said you haven't tried it before, so you bought a lot." Bai Yunshin thinks for a while. "Oh, this is disgusting. Next time we go back, find that girl for me." Then she looks at Li Yunshin. "What are you doing? Do you want the dragon soul too?" Li Yunshin smiles. "I don't want the dragon soul, but I need your cooperation for something. Also, I have some questions I want to ask you. I've been hiding them for a long time." Bai Yunshin frowns and thinks for a while. "What do you want to ask?" "About the ghost emperor." Li Yunshin says, "That Emperor Zhaowu of the Yi dynasty. He was immortal when he was alive. How did you owe him a favor? I can't figure it out. It's very uncomfortable to keep it in my heart." The maid suddenly covers her mouth and laughs softly. She originally looked at Li Yunshin with a slightly anxious gaze, but now it's gloating. Bai Yunshin's expression was calm. "You want to know about this?" Li Yunshin looks at the sky. "Anyway, I have nothing to do for now. Why don't we chat and deepen our friendship? Once this knot in my heart is solved, I can tell you something else. It's not good that I don't know anything about you and then find out that you're involved with Dao Tong." Bai Yunshin straightens and looks at Li Yunshin. "This matter. It's interesting." Speaking of this, she smiles. After smiling for a while, her expression calms down. Li Yunshin feels that she's trying to remember something. So he waits for a while. Then he hears Bai Yunshin say calmly, "It should be hundreds of years ago. The last emperor of the Yi dynasty, Lu Xingyang, was a beautiful man when he was young. In such a world, being an emperor is a first-class position. Because of the existence of Dao Tong and Kenzo, Dao Tong wants the world to be peaceful and stable and the population to grow. Thus, they don't want to see the change of dynasties. Due to this reason, there were practically no successful peasant uprisings in the past thousands of years of history. Rebellions that had just begun to take shape would be wiped out by the soldiers. Once the forces of the rebellion grew slightly larger, it would be difficult for a country to suppress them with its power alone. Either the orthodoxies or the sword sects would take action, or the neighboring countries would help. The peace between countries is also like this. Wantonly attacking without permission is to become the enemy of the Xianmen in the world. Thus, the emperors know that their throne is secure forever. They know that the neighboring countries won't easily start a war. They also know that if they make the people in their country have no way to live and starve for thousands of miles, they will be replaced. Under such circumstances, both the emperor and the people are relatively safe. Thus, the last emperor of the Yi dynasty, Lu Xingyang, doesn't know what kind of fate he will face when he is young. Instead, he felt that he would be like his ancestors, living a peaceful and luxurious life. But things start to change in a summer. That summer is unusually hot and there is a great drought. Thus, the emperor decides to go out to see the suffering of the people. In fact, it's mostly for sightseeing. When Lu Xingyang went to Qingzhou's Goddess Mountain, he found an unknown temple on the mountain. The temple had been hidden in the forest for a long time, and the name of the temple had been eroded away. Even the most knowledgeable scholars of the emperor's side could not deduce from the ancient books in their minds who was worshipped in the temple and where it came from. This small episode made the young emperor feel happy. He disregards his attendants and walks into the temple. He finds a portrait in the temple. There is a woman in the portrait. Even though the emperor has countless beauties in his harem, he is still stunned when he sees the woman in the portrait. The young emperor's mind is taken away. After staring at her for a quarter of an hour, he sighs and says, "If I can share a bed with such a beauty even for one night, it is worth it even if I have to trade my country for it." The attendants and old-fashioned scholars think it is inappropriate for the emperor to say this, but no one dares to ruin the emperor's mood. After saying this, Lu Xingyang orders people to take down the portrait in the temple and bring it with him. An attendant goes to take the portrait. But as soon as his hand touches the portrait, he sees the face of the woman in the portrait quickly deteriorate and decay. Soon the portrait also turns into ashes. When the emperor climbs the mountain, the sky is clear and the sun is scorching. But the moment the portrait is destroyed, the sky suddenly changes and a thunderstorm comes. When the heavy rain falls, there is no way to go down the mountain. The scholars and attendants think the emperor is disrespectful to the unknown goddess in the temple. So the goddess is angry and sends rain, but they still don't dare to say it. But the emperor himself doesn't care. He is the emperor. Self-reflection is a very rare quality for an emperor. But no one expected the rain to go down for 7 days and 7 nights. After 7 days and 7 nights, the emperor and his entourage can go down the mountain. Before there was a great drought in the Yi kingdom. Now there is a flood. Many rivers and lakes in the country burst, and the people are homeless. There are countless casualties. It is a superstorm that covers almost half of the Yi kingdom. At this time Lu Xingyang feels something is wrong, so he hurries back to Weidu, which is now the city of Wei. After returning to the capital, he summons the Taoist priest of Weidu and asks if such a disaster falls from the sky because the emperor is immoral. The Taoist priest hears the emperor's story and only smiles, saying it is not a real god. It is just a monster in the mountains who occupies the position of God and is worshipped. 7 days and 7 nights of heavy rain is not something those monsters can do. The priest tells the emperor not to worry. Although the Taoist priest of Daotong says so, the emperor is still worried. So he worshipped Black Bai Yanjun. The royal sacrifice is naturally generous. Coupled with Lu Xingyang's uneasiness, it is even more generous, so even Yama is moved. That Bai Yanjun appears in the emperor's dream at night, saying that he will protect his throne and the country for a long time, so he can rest assured and not worry. With Yama's guarantee, Lu Xingyang is really relieved. He offers many more sacrifices. For ordinary people, Black Bai Yanjun is a true god who is more mysterious and noble than the immortals of Daotong and Kenzo. How can he be worried? Then, the refugees rise. Chapter 246. The uprising of the refugees happened almost every few decades. The Yi kingdom was prone to drought. When times were bad and more people starved to death, some people who didn't know the truth of the world would want to pull the emperor off his horse. But LV Xingyang knew that Daotong and Kenzo wouldn't allow large-scale revolts in the Yi kingdom. He also knew that Bai Yanjun's promise meant that the Yi kingdom would be prosperous for a long time. Thus he sent troops to suppress them first. They suppressed them while comforting them. They killed some and helped others. In the end, the revolts would disappear without a trace. But 6 months later, LV Xingyang received news that the revolting refugees didn't disappear. Instead, they became even more powerful. At that time, the officials of the Yi kingdom knew that the refugees couldn't shake the country. Thus, they covered up the reports and weren't worried. There was no precedent for this in thousands of years. How could they appear in the Yi kingdom now? As a result, the number of rebels had reached 40,000, and they occupied the territory of 6 prefectures. The leader of the rebels was named Song Dunka. His hometown was a county called Qingyang. Thus, after taking over 6 provinces, he publicly proclaimed himself emperor. The name of the country was Qing. The emperor finally grew anxious and asked for help from Daotong and Kenzo. But the Taoist in the capital of Wei only said that he would report to his sect. Then he said that the emperor could take care of this himself. It was just 40,000. What was there to be afraid of? Another 3 months passed like this. The matter became more and more serious. The rebel army took over 6 provinces and 18 prefectures. They almost took over a third of the Yi kingdom. The soldiers at the front lines reported that the rebel army even had demons and people who knew Taoist spells helping them. The soldiers of the Yi kingdom were no match. The emperor asked for help from Daotong and Kenzo. But then he realized that things were bad. At some point in time, the cultivators in Daotong and Kenzo's camp in the Yi kingdom, they were all gone. LV Xingyang finally realized his fear, because this meant that Daotong and Kenzo had tacitly agreed to this. Daotong and Kenzo wanted to change dynasties. Then came the war between Qing and Yi that lasted for several years. In the intervening years, something else happened. The emperor sat deep in the palace. Seeing the battle reports from the front lines that were not optimistic, he was naturally not in a good mood. Therefore he often went there to relax. He pretended to be an ordinary person and walked in the streets of Wei City. He saw many people and things. The pressure of the subjugation of his country and the worry for the future finally allowed him to seriously experience the sufferings of the common people. He knew how the common people lived their days, years, and lives cautiously. This gave him a unique temperament. He had the noble and imposing aura of an emperor, but he also had the magnanimous aura of someone who cared about the country and the people. Then he met a demon. The demon's name was Bai Yunxin. LV Xingyang was a handsome man, and he had a special temperament that few people in the world possessed. On the other hand, Bai Yunxin and her maidservant had always been wandering around the world, and they loved all kinds of interesting and novel things. She quickly liked the last emperor of Yi dynasty. Although a demon's liking was different from a human's liking, no one knew if Bai Yunxin treated him as a special plaything. But the demoness finally knew his identity and troubles. She realized that she had encountered an interesting matter that was hard to come by in 1,000 years. LV Xingyang also knew that this woman was not a human, but a powerful demon. He asked Bai Yunxin if she could help him protect his kingdom. Once the world was settled, he would worship her with the incense of the entire Yi kingdom. The change of a dynasty was hard to come by in 1,000 years, so it was very interesting. Bai Yunxin happily agreed. And then, this Bai Yunxin also disappeared. What happened next was recorded in detail in the history books. The Yi kingdom was destroyed, Wei city was broken, the city was massacred, and Emperor Yi died in the purple gold palace. Li Yunxin also knew that what happened before was probably not made up. After killing Yunzi, Bai Yanjun once told him why he was helping the ghost emperor. According to what Bai Yanjun said, he owed the ghost emperor LV Xingyang a favor. Now Bai Yunxin's words and Bai Yanjun's words confirmed each other. Bai Yunxin said these words for a long time. Her tone was calm and a little jumpy. It could be seen that when she recalled the time she spent with Emperor Yi, she felt it was a happy memory. When she stopped, it was already noon. But the three demons were in the lake. They didn't feel hot. Instead they felt cool. Li Yunxin narrowed his eyes and thought. He couldn't help but ask, does it have anything to do with the portrait in the ruined temple on Qingzhou's goddess mountain? Bai Yunxin thought, I don't know. Li Yunxin nodded. He thought about it and asked again, so you're saying that the reason you helped me and the ghost emperor stop the people from the sword sect was because you owed Lu Xingyang a favor? Then the question is, you promised to help LV Xingyang. Why did you disappear? My adoptive father didn't allow it. Li Yunxin thought Bai Yunxin needed some time to decide whether to tell him or not. He didn't expect that she would say it without hesitation. I didn't know the reason at that time. I only heard LV Xingyang's words and thought it was the rebellion of the refugees. But after I promised him, I realized it was the general trend of the world. Those people wanted to change the dynasty. But my adoptive father didn't say why. Li Yunxin understood that those people Bai Yunxin mentioned referred to Daotong and Kenzo. This and the destruction of the Yi dynasty hundreds of years ago made him frown. He felt something was wrong. It was not that he was paranoid, but the old capital of the Yi dynasty was in the city of Wei. The dragon soul was in the Dongting near the city of Wei. The Lord Dongting was also in the Dongting. Bai Yunxin also came to the Dongting. Recently, everything happened near the city of Wei. So many people and things happened in such a small area. Li Yunxin felt that these seemingly unrelated things that happened in different periods and forces actually all revolved around one thing or one reason. Now he knew more and more, but he was also more and more confused. Every time he felt that he was about to reach the answer to the riddle, he would find that the so-called answer to the riddle was actually just a factor of that matter, just before the blink of an eye. The last emperor of the Yi dynasty, LV Xingyang, disrespected the portrait on the goddess mountain. Then it rained heavily in the blink of an eye. The refugees revolted and he was abandoned by Daotong and Kenzo. There must be something fishy about it. Now Li Yunxin was the Dragon King. He knew what the rain was all about. Dragons could all reign, but their abilities were different. For example, he was a dragon's son in the realm of truth and he cultivated Taoism. He gathered so many grievances in the city of Wei to make a storm. It was not hard, but it was not easy either. With his Taoism, he could make a light rain covering the entire city of Wei and Dongting. He could also make a moderate rain with a smaller coverage. If he made a storm, it could only cover the city of Wei. He thought it was impossible for him to make a superstorm that lasted for 7 days and 7 nights. He didn't know who could do it. He didn't belong to this world before. He used to see the weather cloud picture, a big earth covered with white clouds. The big ones were as big as a continent, and the small ones were as big as several provinces. Therefore, it was hard for him to imagine that no matter how powerful a demon was, could he make a super heavy rain covering almost half of a country and lasting for several days. There were dragon kings dressed up as demons everywhere in the world. But most of those dragon kings were of the water nationality, and they were born with the ability to make clouds and rain. However, it was also limited. A dragon king in a small river might be able to produce a large area of light rain every month if he exerted all his strength. Fortunately, there were many demons and the quantity could offset the quality. Taoist priests could also pray for rain. But if they prayed for rain, it was pure hooliganism. Taoist priests themselves couldn't make clouds and rain. In Li Yunxin's view, this was easy to understand. Rain clouds that were usually very low, when you looked up, you would feel that they were on the roof of your house and you could touch them by raising your hand. In fact, they were 1 or 2 kilometers high. Those Taoist priests of wills and emptiness realm who lived in Jiang who couldn't even fly, let alone affect the condensation of water vapor in such a high sky, especially on a super large scale. But they couldn't, but the local water nationality demons could. It was easy to distinguish when demons made rain. The clouds were thin and low and most of them were 100 or 200 meters high. It wouldn't last long and the rain wouldn't be very heavy. Therefore, Taoist priests burned magic figures and called those water nationality demons who were born with the ability to make rain. Since this kind of demon could become the dragon king of an area, it meant that he was content with his lot. They wanted incense for cultivation and human worship. Taoist priests represented Daotong, and they practiced the divine mind method. They had an advantage in fighting and they had a huge force behind them. Here they wanted to call for wind and rain. If the demon really didn't cooperate, they would use magic figures and flying swords to kill it, and then they would say that it was this demon who caused trouble here in the past, which was why there was a drought. Where could they go to argue? Therefore, Li Yunxin saw demons making rain as hard labor, and Taoist priests making rain as hooliganism. Therefore he was thinking that LV Xinjiang touched the portrait in the Goddess Mountain Temple, and then it rained for 7 days and 7 nights. Was this man-made or just a coincidence? If it was a coincidence, then why? Daotong suddenly wanted to get rid of the Yi dynasty and build a new Qing dynasty. Thinking like this, he quickly grasped the key point. If they didn't like the LV family as the emperor, they could just replace the LV family. This sounded ridiculous in his world, but no one dared to say it here. The emperors of this world were more like professional managers under Daotong and Kenzo. If the immortals with supreme power didn't like this manager, then they could just tell him to get out and replace him with someone else. Why did they have to make the people angry and start a war? It should be known that Daotong and Kenzo hoped for peace and prosperity in the world and for the people to reproduce. But the war hundreds of years ago, everyone in the Qing kingdom now knew how tragic it was. 9 out of 10 rooms in the prefecture were empty. From the uprising of the refugees to the destruction of Weidu, the population was almost halved. This was half of the population of a country. Chapter 247. So Li Yunxin thinks the key is the half of the population. Now he knew that man was a good thing and so was life. Daotong and Kenzo can get fresh blood from people. They can also kill. So many people had died, so much resentment, they couldn't just let it dissipate in vain. If Daotong and Kenzo kill people for the resentment, they will be evil cults. Now they kill people in the city of Wei. Maybe they will ask someone else to take the blame or find other excuses. But it is hard to find an excuse to kill people in the Yi kingdom. In that case, changing dynasties would be a very, very good method. They didn't kill people. The problem is, why do they need so many dead people? The more he thinks, the more frightened he is. Now he knows the past and also the past of Bai Yunxin and Liu Xingyang. It shows that Bai Yunxin is clean and has nothing to do with Daotong and Kenzo. He is a little relieved and stands up. Since it is like this, I have to discuss something with you. People of Daotong may want to destroy Dongting, the dragon soul, and me. I need your help. When Bai Yunxin was speaking, the servant girl had been silent. Now she finally spoke. She pouts and rolls her eyes at Li Yunxin. Why should I help you? This little maid was most likely very favored. But Li Yunxin is not in the mood to argue with her. He just looks at Bai Yunxin. Seeing her think for a while, he lowers his eyes. How? I don't know what will happen in the lake if the dragon soul is taken away. But I'm afraid that people of Daotong will notice the strange phenomenon and take action in advance. Li Yunxin says, I hope you can take away the dragon soul when my plan succeeds. Hearing his words, the little maid stares at him. She looks at him for a while and says, well, you are a demon now. Humph, you were a human before. You are so evil. My miss left late. If she got hurt, who could she go to? Bai Yunxin only looked at him without saying a word. The maidservant helped her say the question that she found difficult to ask. Li Yunxin was silent for a while, then stood up. He looked down at Bai Yunxin and her maidservant. The two demonesses in human form looked petite under the sunlight, as if they were two powerless ladies from rich families. He let this feeling linger in his heart for a while and said, "If I can escape unscathed, I will find a way to settle your marriage." The maid was taken aback. She first turned to look at Bai Yunxin, then at Li Yunxin. Then she jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Do you know what you're talking about?" However, Li Yunxin was still looking at Bai Yunxin, who was sitting quietly. "No matter what reason you have to accept your adoptive father's arrangement, I will find a way to settle your marriage. I mean, I will not leave any future trouble and solve it completely." The young maidservant snorted. "You are so arrogant." Li Yunxin turned to look at her and smiled. Little girl, you and your miss helped me before. I remember that. But if you make trouble again, I will throw you into the lake." The maidservant followed Bai Yunxin. It was probably the first time someone talked to her like this. She was furious and grinned, showing her sharp demon teeth. "How dare you!" Li Yunxin let out a sigh and casually grabbed her. He was so tall that he almost lifted the young maidservant up. He lifted her up and patted her chest 3 times at lightning speed. Then he exerted more force. Like a cannonball, the little maid was thrown far, far away by him. After 2 breaths of time, a needle-like column of water appeared where the sky and the water met. Bai Yunxin did not stop him. She just looked at him quietly. After Li Yunxin patted his hands again, he looked up and said, "My adoptive father is the golden-winged rock king. Do you know what you just said?" Li Yunxin smiled. "Where there is a will, there is a will. Although that girl is talkative, she wanted my help last night. I'm just a monster in the real realm. Compared to the Rock King, I'm probably as weak as an ant. But now that she's hinting at me in such an earnest way, it means that I can help her with this, right? I thought about it for a whole night. I feel that helping you is also helping myself. So don't refuse me. Why don't you promise me to help you and then promise me to help me? Everyone will be happy and mutually beneficial. Isn't that perfect?" Bai Yunxin was silent for a while. Then she smiled. "You are a demon in the true state," she said in a low voice. Her tone was like a person sighing in a low voice. It had the strange slyness of a demon. "Okay," she said again. At the same time she stood up and looked at Li Yunxin. "I will take the dragon soul in 10 days. 10 days, is that enough for you?" Li Yunxin frowned slightly. "It's a little short." The demoness laughed and flew up to the cloud. "If you can't do it in 10 days, how can you help me in the future?" She waved her hand again. The little black donkey on the grassland was rolled up to the cloud. At the same time 2 black dots fell from the sky. Li Yunxin hurriedly dodged. When he looked again, it was the black donkey that was scared when it was rolled up to the sky. Chapter 248. Because of the fire, Weiqing became dry. Weiqing used to be Weiqing. Weiqing was not a lone city, there were roads leading to all directions. It was also the economic and cultural center of the river region, with a lot of goods passing through it every day. Now that Weiqing was destroyed, the other prefectures were naturally affected. Even if the emperor did not want to care about this, he still had to ask. Therefore, people from the neighboring prefectures came to ask. The Taoists of Langya Cave only sent a low-level disciple to deal with them. That disciple only said 4 words. "Demons are causing trouble." Therefore, the officials nodded and left as if they were granted amnesty. Whether it was demons or other reasons, who would want to deal with those people at this time? The headmaster of Langya Cave, Kun Wuzi, stood on the cloud and looked at the ground below him. From his point of view, Weiqing was just a small red square. The square was surrounded by densely packed bright spots, glistening under the sunlight like countless gems. Those bright spots were the mirror-like array that Yu Meng and the rest saw when they escaped from Weiqing. All the vitality within a few miles was sucked away. The entire burning Weiqing and the hundreds of thousands of souls in the city became the core driving force of the array. A strong force gathered in the array, waiting to be unleashed. Kun Wuzi looked at this scene and sighed. The Taoist beside him said, "Headmaster, you already have a plan, why are you still sighing?" Kun Wuzi was silent for a while, then said, "Once Weiqing was destroyed, hundreds of thousands of people died. I feel guilty." The Taoist was slightly stunned, as if he did not expect the headmaster to sigh because of this. He thought for a while, then comforted, "Everyone in the world knows that Dao Tong and Kenzo take care of the people, they won't think of anything else. Originally, it was to incite the anger of the people, making it difficult for demons to stand in the world. Isn't this killing two birds with one stone? Kun Wuzi shook his head, saying that Wei Qing was destroyed by demons is just a rumor. Now that it is spread around the world, I'm afraid it will become a calamity in my heart. Human lives are one thing. But if this calamity really comes, I'm afraid it will come in a threatening manner. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. Kun Wuzi thought for a while and looked down at his feet. It's a pity for that Li Yunxin. If he can really pursue the Tao, he is also a talent. The Taoist priest beside him fell silent. Then a flash of resentment appeared on his face. Then he said, the sect master was indeed thinking too much before. Sometimes a man's strength is limited. Kun Wuzi understood what he was talking about. Previously he was worried that Li Yunxin might obstruct them and ruin the layout of the cave near the city of Wei. But in recent days it seemed that Li Yunxin really didn't have a solution. There was news from Yunshan. Although Black Cat Demon and Rooster Demon were stubborn and obstinate, they still managed to learn a little about Li Yunxin from their words. Although his parents were extremely talented, and he himself was also a capable person, at least he was not beyond the imagination of common sense. Previously, because they underestimated the enemy too much and he was good at playing tricks, a transcendent state cultivator and a true state cultivator fell into his trap. But his good luck could only go so far. Yes. Kun Wuzi thought for a while and sighed. Previously I thought that he might have a way to unlock the Dongting inhibition. But now I think I overestimated him. He might be able to escape, but for the overall situation he is like a breeze blowing on the mountain. It won't affect the overall situation. The Taoist priest beside him continued, right now our target is the demon, not just him alone. I suppose a man like him must have been so proud and conceited that he would never have thought that one day. He would have been destroyed in passing by us. I would have liked to see his eyes before he died and what they would have been like. Kun Wuzi glanced at him. He knew that the cultivator beside him was going through the trial of losing his mind. Therefore he would not hide the most mean and vicious emotions in his heart. Fortunately, his cultivation was quite profound and he was just trying to act fast with his tongue. Those who did not have enough cultivation would end up in a more miserable situation. Because of more and more regrets and jealousy, they would lose themselves completely and fall into some terrible emotions. Finally they would fall into the demon's path. Siyuan, gather your mind. Kun Wuzi said to him. The Taoist priest's name was Siyuan, and his Taoist name was Fei Kongzi. He was 63 years old this year, and he had already reached the advanced level of Jinren, the second level of the three realms of Jinren. For mortals, 63 years old was considered 60 years old. But for a Jinren who could live for hundreds of years he was a young man. He had almost spent the past 63 years in Yunshan, and he was indeed a young man. Fei Kongzi was not worried about the headmaster's worries. He smiled, but there was obvious hatred in his smile, which was rare among cultivators. I can't gather my mind during the trial of losing my mind, headmaster. This trial is probably the last chance for me to experience the pleasure of the mortals before I enter the Shen state. Therefore, I don't want to gather my mind. My junior martial sister Ling Kongzi was harmed by Li Yunxin, and she lost her body. Even though she is not willing to become my Tao companion, my feelings for the mortals are real. After I pass the trial of losing my mind, it will be hard for me to be moved again. I might as well take this chance to indulge myself. Once I succeed, I will find Li Yunxin, and let him have a taste of what I am experiencing now. Kun Wuzi looked at his expression and said, your junior sister and your martial uncle Yu Yunzi probably thought the same way in the past. That Li Yunxin is, after all, a genius. You have to be careful. Fei Kongzi tilted his head and smiled. He looked very much like a mortal. But his smile didn't last long. Because he and Kun Wuzi saw a strange phenomenon in the distance. They stood on clouds and looked down at all living beings from high up in the sky. There were no clouds in the distance and the sun was high up in the sky. The sky was blue like the ocean. In such a background, a ripple suddenly appeared in the void. The transparent ripple was especially eye-catching in the eyes of cultivators. Kun Wuzi and Fei Kongzi frowned at the same time and shouted, who is it? Profound realm cultivators were supposed to be calm and indifferent, and their expressions wouldn't change even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of them. But the problem was, even profound realm cultivators hadn't seen such an escape technique. A cultivator naturally couldn't be proficient in all the techniques in the world, but just like what Li Yunxin said in the past, many things had the same principles, and you would always know why it was like this. And now, the reason why profound realm cultivator Kun Wuzi lost his composure and shouted was because he couldn't see through the opponent's technique. The person quickly revealed himself. Or rather, it was just a wandering soul. A wandering soul without a body should be a yin god or a ghost cultivator. But Kuan Wuzi didn't feel the resentment that was unique to ghost cultivators from this wandering soul. Sect Master Kuan Wuzi. This semi-transparent wandering soul bowed in the air. This place was already 1,000 meters in the sky, and the wind was very strong. But this wandering soul seemed to be outside of heaven and earth and didn't move at all. My name is Lin Liangji, greeting Sect Master Kuan Wuzi. The wandering soul said his name, and then moved forward slightly. The two of them were 100 meters apart. But the amazing eyesight of cultivators allowed them to see the appearance of the other party clearly. Kuan Wuzi frowned slightly. He stared at him carefully for a while. This wandering soul was semi-transparent, but his original appearance could be seen. He was a middle-aged man of average height and didn't have a beard. There was nothing special about his face and there were no obvious wounds on his body. His expression was indifferent, and there was even a trace of a smile, as if he was a fellow Taoist who greeted him on the cloud mountain. The Langya Heaven Sect Master said in a deep voice, "Who are you?" Did a fellow Taoist turn into a ghost cultivator? It was very rare for a Taoist to die and turn into a ghost cultivator. Because Dao Tong and Kenzo didn't want the heavenly heart technique to be spread out, and demons could also learn the great Tao. Lin Liangji laughed. It's not what you think. Although I also cultivate the heavenly heart technique, I don't belong to Dao Tong or Kenzo. Sect Master Kuan Wuzi doesn't know me, but I know you. This time I came to ask you some questions and I hope you can answer them. Kuan Wuzi realized that Lin Liangji's tone was light, but the meaning behind it was very tough. At this time and place, he suddenly appeared in front of the Langya Heaven Sect Master, claiming that he had some questions to ask you. No matter how you looked at it, it didn't seem to be a good intention. But Kuan Wuzi was silent for a while and then smiled slightly. Ask first. Forget it, I will ask you about your background. The wandering soul who called himself Lin Liangji didn't seem to care about the threat in Kuan Wuzi's words, and actually asked, I know that the big tactical array set by Sect Master Kuan Wuzi is the life-killing Big Dipper array. Using the demon power of the demons as a guide, the wish power of hundreds of thousands of dead souls in the city is channeled into the array. It is said that it is very powerful, and one blow can kill a cultivator at the peak of the profound realm. Now you claim that you want to use it to deal with the inhibition of Dongting, but it is actually a cover. The reason why Kuan Wuzi pretended to open the restriction to take the dragon soul was because he wanted to summon the great demons from all directions to stop this matter. The great demons might not be willing to do so, but since the divine dragon had given the order, they had no choice but to obey. Or, the dragon will come in person. No matter what, when the time comes, Sect Master Kuan Wuzi will give the order. Or kill a few big demons of the true realm or the profound realm, or simply seriously injure the dragon, it will be a good deal with no loss. Am I right? Kuan Wuzi thought for a while, raised his hand, stroked his beard and nodded slightly, yes. But since you know so much, I'm afraid you can't leave today. Lin Liangji hurriedly smiled and waved his hand. Don't worry, Sect Master. I still have something to say. It's just that you want to destroy Dongting, the demons and even the Shinryu. Have you thought about the translucent jade slip? As far as I know, the translucent jade slip is with Li Yunxin. I'm afraid you want to destroy that treasure too. Kuan Wuzi was stunned. But then he snorted, I don't know what you are talking about. Lin Liang showed a tolerant smile. You are just pretending. My junior fellow apprentice Qing Liang used to be a close friend of Taoist Yin Zi, the head of the Suyuan Temple in Dongting. I have also reminded him several times in the city of Wei. Unfortunately, he was headstrong and finally died in the hands of Li Yunxin. Taoist Yunzi also knows about the translucent jade slip. How can Sect Master Kuan Wuzi not know about it? That day you talked with Li Yunxin for a long time in Yunzhong and he also told you about it. Now you want to destroy the translucent jade slip. Aren't you afraid that the two saints will hate you and kill you? Kuan Wuzi's eyes locked on the wandering soul who called himself Lin Liang. He stared at him for a long time and then said in a deep voice, You are well informed. You seem to have nothing to fear. If you are Li Yunxin's Sect Master, you are mistaken. Lin Liang smiled and shook his head. I am not Li Yunxin's friend. On the contrary, I might be his enemy. I just really want the translucent jade slip. Of course it would be best if I could kill him. Sect Master, you don't have to worry about which force I am from. We have many people in Daotong and even in your Langya Cave Heaven. It's just that you haven't discovered them yet. I don't have any ill intentions. I just want to know that since you have reached this stage, can you cooperate with us? Wait until we capture Li Yunxin and get his translucent jade slip, then you can do your own things. In Kun Wuzi's eyes, this person's request was really arrogant. But it was this kind of arrogance that forced him to treat it seriously. Unless he was a madman, no one would dare to be so arrogant in front of a mysterious realm sect master. Kun Wuzi frowned. Cooperation like this? If we really cooperate like you said and you go to capture Li Yunxin first, it will delay our plan to exterminate the demons. What should we do? Lin Liang didn't mind and smiled. What sect master wants to do is to start a war with the demons in the world. Compared to what we want to do, this kind of thing is just a cloud. Kun Wuzi was so angry that he laughed. Starting a war with the demons involves the people of the world and the fate of humanity. Are you talking about a cloud? He was waiting for Lin Liang to say something that could help him speculate. But the other party suddenly became silent. It was as if his good temper and patience had been used up, and he didn't want to say anything more. Lin Liang's expression became calm, and his smile disappeared. He looked at Kun Wuzi. Sect master, you talk too much nonsense. I only want a reply, to agree or to disagree. Such rude words caused Kun Wuzi to lose his patience. He decided to capture this person first. No matter why he was so arrogant, Dao Tong had enough power and capital to wake him up. Kun Wuzi sneered, you overestimate yourself. Then, his sleeves suddenly fluttered and he was about to take out a talisman. At this moment he heard Lin Liang say calmly, kill him. Kun Wuzi was surprised for a moment. Because the other party's words seemed to be directed at someone else. This meant that the other party had set up an ambush here. He immediately released his divine sense and scanned the surroundings. But there were only him, Fei Yunzi, and Lin Liang in the sky within a radius of 100 miles. There was no ambush. The other party was bluffing. But at the next moment, Kun Wuzi's body suddenly exploded in the sky. Even his flesh and blood turned into ashes in an instant, leaving no trace behind. This was because when he released his divine sense, the life and death Big Dipper formation that was formed by the 335 appraisal formations around Weiqing City suddenly shot out a ray of light that was as thin as a hair. This ray of light was so thin that it was hard to distinguish in the dark. But it hit Kun Wuzi's body. The indescribably strong body of a cultivator of the mysterious realm instantly turned into ashes. Kun Wuzi, the head of the Langya cave, died. Chapter 249. The gale caused by the explosion of Kun Wuzi's body lasted for half an hour before it dissipated. If it was on the ground, this gale would have destroyed all man-made structures within a radius of 100 miles, leaving not a single trace behind. However, at this moment they were thousands of meters high in the sky. Only two people were affected by the gale, Fei Yunzi and Lin Liangji. But the two of them didn't seem to be afraid of the gale. They even talked in the gale. Lin Liangji frowned. He didn't seem to be happy that he killed Kun Wuzi so easily. Did you catch him? Fei Yunzi was silent for a while. His eyes were absent-minded as if his soul was wandering the world, looking for something. After 3 breaths, his eyes lit up again and he became alive again. No, it's troublesome. He frowned and sighed. The mysterious realm is indeed unfathomable. Fei Yunzi was of the same generation as Yunzi and was regarded by Kun Wuzi as the candidate for the next Heavenly Grotto sect master. At this moment he was talking to the mysterious Lin Liangji as if he was talking to an old friend. Lin Liangji thought for a while. But his body was destroyed by the life-killing Big Dipper formation. His soul was also injured, right? Yes. But we didn't expect him to be able to escape. Now it's hard to say whether he has any protective magic treasure or not. Just now, when his body was destroyed, I sensed a trace of his soul heading east. Fei Yunzi squinted his eyes and looked east. He sighed. Forget it. A trace of his soul. It won't be a bad thing to become a ghost cultivator without any consciousness. These days, I had to help him with the formation and also did something under his eyes to accumulate power for this attack. Mistakes are inevitable. Lin Liangji accepted his explanation. The two of them didn't speak anymore. They stayed in the air for a long time. Until the gale in the sky gradually dissipated. Lin Liangji floated forward and stood a few meters away from Fei Yunzi. Then he solemnly cupped his hands and bowed to Fei Yunzi. He said, then, Junior Marshal Brother Fu Liangji, you have been in Daotong for 46 years. Now you have finally succeeded. You have worked hard. Congratulations. Fei Yunzi, who was called Lucky Liangzi by Lin Liangzi, was silent for a while before a mocking smile appeared on his face. Is this considered a success? According to the elders, this was only a small step. But he raised his head and let out a long breath. You've worked hard indeed. Next step. I still want Junior Marshal Brother to continue lurking in Daotong, Lin Liangji said, but not as a Fei Yunzi but as a Kun Wuzi. Fei Yunzi was slightly startled. Kun Wuzi? He is in the profound realm. He frowned. I possessed Fei Yunzi and helped him cultivate from the emptiness realm to the true realm. Now that I'm the son of Kun Wu, I can say that I'm restraining my power, and I can avoid revealing any flaws during the battle. But this physical body... Don't you know that the physical body of someone who has mastered the mystical realm is already very difficult to destroy? Just now, the life and death grand formation's attack had consumed the yang qi of 100,000 people. How can I disguise myself as the son of Kun Wu with this body? Lin Liangji smiled and tossed something out. This thing looked very small, as big as a fingernail. But when it was in front of Fei Yunzi, it had become as big as a person. And this was indeed a person. It was the son of Kun Wu. In other words, it was a person who looked exactly the same as the son of Kun Wu. One of the elders offered his body. Lin Liangji said with a tone of admiration, awe, and emotion, in terms of strength, it's even stronger than the body of Kun Wuzi. You can use this body. Disguise as the son of Kun Wu and continue to stay at the Dongting. When we catch Li Yunxin, we will act according to Kun Wuzi's plan. Kill as many demons as they come. It's best. Lin Liangji laughed. Ask Daotong Kenzo and demons to kill them all. Fei Yunzi stared at the body in front of him for a long time and then sighed helplessly. After this breath, the body of Fei Yunzi suddenly lost its vitality and fell from the sky. Lin Liangji raised his hand and smashed it in the air. Kun Wuzi came back to life. He coughed a few times, moved his hands and feet and sighed again. Alas! When will it end? After thinking for a while he said, Fu Liangji. It's been a long time since someone called me that. I almost forgot my own name. Now when I think about our Taoist name again, I always feel weird. Lin Liangji frowned and looked at him, saying warily, the elders have their own reasons. Junior brother, your words. I don't like it. Don't let the people and things in Daotong blind your heart. Now that the world's catastrophe is coming, junior brother, don't stand on the wrong side. Fei Yunzi was stunned. Catastrophe? Didn't the elders say there's still? Lin Liangji didn't want to talk about this topic anymore. He smiled coldly and said, do your job. Our time is coming soon. Li Shan was walking in the lake. According to Li Yunxin, his real body was an electric eel, not an ordinary eel. But he didn't care about it. Demons rarely cared about their origin. According to Li Yunxin, he wanted to gather the demons in the lake and then do a big thing. This big thing was a part of Wei River Dragon King's plan. He wanted to unify the demons and then be used by Dragon King. He chose to go to his former cave, Shipwreck Valley. Although most of the experienced demons there had been killed by Li Yunxin, there were still some small monsters who had just matured. He gathered these small monsters and asked them to pass his orders to the lake. It would be much easier than doing it himself. After all, the big demons in the lake had been plowed clean. His reputation as the 10th young master was even more well known than that of Wei River Dragon King in Dongting. He first ordered an eel monster with a serious tail called Buju. Its personal ability was not bad, and it could transform into a human shape. It was supposed to be a monster general, but it was just too lazy to pay attention to it. He didn't expect that it was still alive. Now it could be used. He first told Buju what he was going to do and gave it a lot of tokens. Then he ordered some useful little demons to carry out his orders and go to various places in the lake. He only came back when he met some monsters who made trouble. Otherwise, Dongting was so huge and wide that he couldn't do it alone in a month. Buju left after getting the order. It disappeared at the bottom of the dark lake in the blink of an eye. Li Shan waited at ease. He waited until 2 days later. All the demons in the lake that could be counted had gathered together. Lord Dongting had been operating in the lake for thousands of years, and the lake was rarely disturbed by Taoists and swordsmen. Because of the dragon soul and Lord Dongting in the lake, the monster energy was naturally strong. Therefore there were a lot of water monsters in Dongting. Not counting those killed by Li Yunxin that night, there were 300 demons who could transform into a human shape gathering in front of Li Shan now. It was a terrifying number for the world of Dongting. Li Shan used to want to see this result the most. Let the demons in Dongting surrender to him. Now half of this wish had been fulfilled, because the other half belonged to the Wei River Dragon King. When he got out of his shipwreck valley, he saw those aquatic demons gathered together and whispered to each other. He didn't know what they were talking about. He also saw the eel monster called Buju came to him and said, "10th young master, everyone is here. Just wait for 10th young master's instruction on what to do next." This Buju was eloquent. He was even clearer than those small monsters who gave orders before. Li Shan thought that he had buried his talent in the past, but now he got what he deserved today. He glanced at the first group of monsters in the water, and then he frowned slightly. What did Toad King and the old turtle say? Buju came forward with a smile and said, "10th young master." 10th young master was right. I went to the two kings with your token. Although they didn't stop me, they only thought that the demons under them were not yours. They told us to look elsewhere. Li Shan sneered. I had expected this. Forget it. Just tell them to keep their heads down. Unexpectedly, the little monster Buju didn't finish his words. He continued with a smile, "Young master, you have a good foresight. But I thought that there were many demons under the two kings and most of them were brave and fierce. If they couldn't be used by me, wouldn't it delay your important matter? So I killed the two kings, now the demons under them are also here." Li Shan didn't understand for a while and he was stunned for a while. Then he used the electric light to check the demons carefully. 200 or 300 demons were densely covered the bottom of the water. It was very difficult to find a few people. However, Li Shan had also dealt with Toad King and Turtle King. He knew that the demons under them were all wearing hard armor. So he found them soon. Sure enough, the demons under them were also there. He was stunned for a while and turned to look at Buju. She sized him up from head to toe. "What did you just say? You killed the two kings?" Buju laughed. "That's right." Then he stretched out his hand and took out two heads from behind him. They were the heads of the two kings. But this naked creature had a scaly face and a rather flat nose. His facial features barely resembled a human's, but his mouth was wide and some sharp teeth were exposed. He wore a worn-out waterproof suit and carried a bag on his back. He held an iron ore in his hand. He didn't know where he found it. Such a little monster killed the two kings? Even if he, the 10th young master, personally took action, he couldn't guarantee that he could kill the two kings within 2 days without any injuries. Li Shan was a demon, so he wasn't as smart as a human. But no matter how slow-witted he was still a big demon. At this moment he realized that something was wrong. Then small electric lights appeared around him. Who are you? He couldn't have such a guy under him. With such tyrannical strength, it was enough for him to become a demon king. But Buju was still laughing. 10th young master, what are you talking about? I have been following you for more than 200 years, but now I don't know you? No wonder. I didn't want to show my ability before the time was right. But now the good time has come. I want to advise the king not to miss the opportunity. Li Shan was more and more frightened when he listened to him. He quietly raised his monster power and was on guard, asking, "What opportunity? What opportunity?" Buju laughed. "Of course it's a good opportunity to catch Li Yunxin. That way River Dragon King Li Yunxin ruined our plan. Now he is in Dongting. If we catch him, it will be a great achievement." Li Shan's eyes widened, although he couldn't see anything with his eyes. "Who are you? If you don't tell me, don't blame me for being rude." Buju sighed with a smile. 10th young master. 200 years ago, you received our benefits and practiced the way of the will of heaven so that you can have today's achievement. Now you don't know us? I will let you know that we are members of the Freemasonry Association. I have raised you for 200 years. Now you should know how to repay our kindness, right? When Li Shan heard this, he was really stunned. The secret of 200 years ago. How did this little monster know? What he said was actually true. He was shocked for a moment and stood still. He just asked subconsciously, "How to repay our kindness?" Buju laughed. 10th young master, you can repay it yourself." Li Shan didn't figure out what the eel monster meant. The eel monster had already swung the mixed iron ore in his hand. Li Shan was blind. He only relied on the electric light on his body to perceive things. Normally, this moment should be more timely than watching. But who could expect? Li Shan, a monster in the transcendent state, couldn't keep up with the speed of this little monster. With a bang, Li Shan's head exploded. There was a loud bang at the bottom of the lake. Before the demons could figure out what was going on, the whole shipwreck valley turned red. After a long time, a demon suddenly appeared on the surface of the lake. It was Li Shan's appearance. This Li Shan stopped in midair for a moment, then shouted toward the water, "Listen to me, my demon general." Buju didn't listen to my orders. I have killed him on the spot. If you don't obey, you will be like Buju." Another wave surged in the water. 200 to 300 monsters, some on top of the waves, some under the water, all responded. Li Shan laughed out loud 3 times and led the demons to the direction of Mount June. The monsters moved majestically, as if they weren't afraid of the evil dragon in the lake. They left a wide and long trail on the water, as if a huge ship had passed by. Originally, the birds were frightened and the aquatic animals fled. But another person came out of the water. As soon as this person came out of the water, she immediately spat and subconsciously wanted to comb her fur. But she was in human form, so she couldn't lick herself even if she turned around. Only then did he toss and turn on the water for a while before he found a solitary reef protruding out of the water to land on. First, she shook her head to get rid of the water on her body, then stared at the direction of the monsters for a while. Then an indescribable expression appeared on Sanhua's face. Even if Li Yunxin was here, he probably couldn't figure out what she was thinking. She first looked into the distance, then slowly moved her eyes to the sky. "Little trouble," she whispered to herself. No one knew who she was talking about. Humph, a little trouble. They are all the same. Chapter 250. The Li Shan, transformed by the eel monster Nakaho, is also a brave and ruthless character. He leads a group of monsters to Mount June. When he arrives at the water, his face changes and he shouts, my king, I've brought them all." Just now, when Nakaho killed Li Shan, it was at the bottom of 100 meters deep. At that depth, it's dark and there are many aquatic plants in Shipwreck Valley, so people can't see clearly. These aquatic creatures were born with poor eyesight. Therefore, no one knew that this 10th young master Li Shan was a fake. They only thought that the 10th young master Li Shan had killed him because she was angry that Barishio had done something unpleasant to her. He shouts like this 2 or 3 times and Li Yunxin appears from the hall. First, he looks at these demons. They have all transformed into human beings. But they don't look like human beings. Then he looks at Li Shan. The look on his face is much more lively than before. At this moment he is looking at Li Yunxin with a complacent face, as if he is asking for credit. He thinks for a moment and says straightforwardly, I summoned you here because I have something to do. And now Daotong outside the lake. Speaking of this, he suddenly realizes that it's unnecessary. These demons are not smart. It's already clever if they can say it clearly. If he tells them a lot of things about the life and death of the Daotong demons, they will probably be more confused. He doesn't explain those things but just says, well, let's cut the crap. You have to go out of the lake with me later. Out of the lake, go into the Wei River. Visit the monster kings near Dongting along the way and tell them that Wei River Dragon King has something to discuss with them. He asks them to go to the Baidang village wilderness forest by the lake. After saying this, he looks at those water monsters again, but they are still standing there in a daze. He doesn't know if they understand him or not. But Li Shan approaches and whispers, my king, I'm afraid that these idiots are not good enough to do this kind of thing. Li Yunxin looks at him again and laughs. It's because they are stupid enough to do this. You've seen the likes of the Roving King and the Serpent King. In the beginning they wanted to deal with me and sent messengers to inform me. They have been in the lake for hundreds of years, but they still suspect each other and don't care about me. How can I expect those demons outside the cave to unite? We just need to send a message to them so that the people of Daotong will think that we are contacting the demon kings from all over the world to fight to the death with them. In this way they will help me. Li Shan stood there in a daze for a while, as if thinking about the meaning behind Li Yunxin's words. After a while he said, what do you want me to do for the king? Li Yunxin glanced at him. You seem to be very studious today. Li Shan hurriedly said, I just want to share the burden of the king so that I can have a good future in the future. Li Yunxin smiled. That's the right way to think. Then I'll also let you know, the Taoist priests of Daotong captured the small demons nearby. I heard that they used them to create a formation. However, they were probably afraid of trouble, so they did not attack the nearby great fiendish demons. What are the great fiendish demons around here? Humph, they are just some guys who want to occupy the magpie's nest. Li Yunxin snorted angrily. I am the Wei River Dragon King. The entire Wei River should be under my control. However, those things have occupied my territory. They don't even care about the Shinryu's Firebird. In the past, I was too lazy to care about them. But now, humph, once the Taoist priests of Daotong notice that they are colluding with each other, they will definitely not sit back and do nothing. Now that the war between the demons and Daotong is imminent, what do you think they will do? Of course they will kill those restless demon kings. In this way I will use the means of those Taoist priests to clear all the demon kings nearby, in the future who will dare to compete with me near Dongting. When I get through this tribulation I will be the Wei River Dragon King in name and in reality. Listening to Li Yunxin's words, Li Shan immediately claps his hands. Your Majesty, you are really smart. Your means are brilliant. But, the people of Daotong are going to destroy Dongting. In the future they may stay here and refuse to leave. Even if you get the Wei River, I am afraid that you will not be able to control it in the future. Hearing his words, Li Yunxin smiles mysteriously. After thinking for a while he seems to have made a decision. He squints at Li Shan and says, "You are worried about this. Well, I will also tell you about it so that you can do things for me dutifully. Don't have some stupid ideas. Do you know that I used to be a human?" Li Shan is stunned and says, "Your Majesty, what do you mean?" Li Yunxin laughed. "As long as you know. I am a demon now, but I used to be a human. Those Taoist priests of Daotong, how many people are there in total? They have residences in the cities in the secular world. But they are just famous big cities. Those small cities and small towns can't even be seen. Do you know? Daotong is short of manpower. It is said that there are many Taoist priests on Mount Yinshan, but they all want to cultivate Tao and don't want to get involved in secular affairs. So, now Daotong is going to conquer the world and take a lot of territory from demons? Do they just ignore it? They can ignore the places where there are people. The government will take care of it for them. There is too much yang energy in the human world, so it is difficult for demons to form. But the places where those demons used to live are mostly barren mountains and rivers. No one goes there. If we ignore it after conquering this place, new demons will appear in a dozen or decades. Hey, what should we do? Of course we will find someone to manage it. Li Yunxin smiles proudly. For example, the Wei River. I used to be a human. I always understand people's thoughts. When this thing is over, I will find the people of Daotong and tell them that I am still dedicated to Tao and willing to abandon the darkness for the light, to suppress the demons here and take charge of this place for them. As long as one is reasonable and understands the general situation, how could there be a single word, no? This will be the general trend in the future. Li Yunxin exhales proudly. There are endless demons. The only people the orthodoxy could kill were those stubborn fools. And others like me will become the agents of Daotong. So, what are you afraid of? This Dongting is finished, but it doesn't mean that I will also be finished. Not only will I not be finished, but I will also be happier than before. I don't even need to hide anymore. Li Shan listens to him dumbfoundedly and can't help clapping again. Wonderful, wonderful. Your Majesty, this is really a good plan. Being praised like this, Li Yunxin seems to be excited. Or maybe he thinks that Li Shan is also a talented person, so he complacently says, "Do you think it's just like this?" Although Daotong is strong, it may not be stronger than Shinryu. I will submit to them first and wait. Once they are defeated by Shinryu, it will be interesting. I am the son of a dragon, a demon of noble status. How can I really submit to Daotong? Everything I have done before is just feigning civility and waiting for the opportunity to fight back. At that time the people of Daotong will get out of Dongting and Weishui River. Won't this place be mine? After saying this he squints at Li Shan. This is called killing two birds with one stone. Those stupid demons. How can they understand this? Fake Li Shan listens to Li Yunxin telling his plan and sneers slightly in his heart. But he still keeps calm on the surface and only praises Li Yunxin for this good plan. Li Yunxin shows off for a while and seems to feel that he has won Li Shan's heart. He doesn't say anything more. First, he tells Li Shan to convey his meaning to the monsters, and then he uses his holy spell to take them out of the inhibition of Dongting. This too was a troublesome matter. His dragon palace is a very secret place. He is not as bold as Lord Dongting, who opens up his dragon palace as a new world and puts all the shrimps and crabs in it. Therefore he has to use his holy spell to block the senses of those demons first, then he takes them into the dragon palace and sends them out of the inhibition. Just like that, more than 4 hours passed. Demons in Dongting rarely go out of Dongting before. Because they are all water monsters. This means that although they are in human form, they are still the happiest in the water. Moreover, some demons have natural holy spells and they can only use the wind and waves. Now that they had come to the wilderness forest on land, many ignorant fiendish demons were complaining incessantly. Thanks to Li Shan running back and forth, they don't scatter. Fortunately, Dongting is next to Weishui River. It is a big lake formed by the Weishui Bay. These demons walk through the forest soon and come to the bank of Weishui River. They jump into the water hurriedly. During this period, some demons get excited and want to be distracted in the forest. Li Shan doesn't need to be ordered by Li Yunxin. He immediately kills them. Li Yunxin sees that he is smart and decisive, so he is relieved after the demons enter Weishui River. He only tells Li Shan to hide and wait by the water. He goes back to Dongting first because he has something to do. Li Shan nods and agrees in a hurry. So, he is the only one left in the forest by Weishui River. The place where the demons enter the water is on the other side of the Sanhiku. There used to be no one here. Looking south, you can see Nanshan Mountain in the distance. The hottest time of the day has just passed, and the leaves of the plants are all withered. The steaming heat has not dissipated in the forest. The sun penetrates the sparse branches and leaves on the edge of the forest, sprinkling light spots on the ground. Such an environment is not comfortable for a low-level water monster. It is even a kind of torture. However, Li Shan raises his head and stares at the sun in the sky for a long time. He takes a deep breath of the air in the forest, which is full of the fragrance of plants. Then he lets out a satisfied ha. Then he slowly lies on the grass, which is slightly warm because of the heat. He stretches out his hands and feet and lies on the ground. After half an hour, Li Shan sits up again. First, he took out a talisman from his bosom and then he burned it. The ashes dissipate and he waits peacefully. After waiting for half an hour, a stream of light appears in the sky. The stream of light goes straight to the forest. It hovers over Li Shan's head for a while and finally seems to find someone. So it falls down. It is Kun Wuzi. But naturally, it is a fake like Li Shan. It is Fai Yunzi, who is called Fu Liangzi by Lin Liangzi, pretending to be Kun Wuzi. In the eyes of people who don't know, this scene is naturally very strange. The master of Lengya Cave of Daotong is standing on the grass. He looks down at a strange lake monster. And the lake monster is also sitting and looking up at him. The two of them look at each other for a while. Li Shan suddenly laughed and said, "You are doing very well. When we separated decades ago, you and I were both in the transcendent state. Now I am just at the peak of the transcendent state. Senior apprentice brother, you are already..." He suddenly sat up and stared at Kun Wuzi carefully for a while. His expression changed and he said, "Your body? What happened to it? Did you take over Kun Wuzi's body? How did you do it?" Kun Wuzi sighed and said, "It really is you. Sai, I haven't seen you for many years. I almost forgot that your Taoist name is Tan Liangzi. This body of mine wasn't possessed. It was an elder who gave up his own body and gave it to me. You don't have to be too surprised. But now you, Sai." He looked at the eel monster that he called Tan Liangzi with a look of pity. After a while, he sighed and said, "You used to be a person who loved beauty. But now you are trapped in this body. It is really hard on you." Li Shan smiled and said, "Body? Body is just a small matter. What I dislike the most is the rotten smell in the lake. In that place I don't see the sun. I stay in the water for decades. I eat rotten meat and drink muddy water. I haven't seen such a scene for a long time. I was also obsessed and wanted to be a lake monster. It is good to be a Taoist like you. I eat well, wear well, and my state is also good." Kun Wuzi smiled and didn't argue with him about this. Or maybe he felt that Li Shan had suffered for many years and did not know how to comfort him. He thought for a while and changed the topic. "Junior apprentice brother, you have suffered. But now, do you have any progress on your side?" Li Shan then said seriously, "I don't have any progress on my side. I just thought of you. I didn't know that you had become Kun Wuzi, but I knew that you must be by his side. And on my side that Li Yunxin is planning something. I thought for a while and felt that this opportunity cannot be missed. So, I disguised myself as a monster king in the lake. Listen to me carefully." So, he told what Li Yunxin did in Dongting these days and emphasized what Li Yunxin said to him before. Kun Wuzi listened and his expression changed slightly. Then he was silent for a long time. His words have no flaws. He frowned and twirled his beard. "But how do you know that he didn't say it to coax you?" Li Shan smiled slightly. "First, he doesn't know that I am a fake. Second, senior apprentice, he even said that he used to be a human, so it must be true. Do you know about this?" Kun Wuzi thought for a while. "This is true. Kun Wuzi told me before, but he also told me not to look down on that Li Yunxin. Now that I've heard you say this, he does have some tricks up his sleeves and is courageous enough. He asked Daotong to clean up for him, and then he reaped benefits from both sides. I don't know him very well. But if I think about it carefully, Kun Wuzi said that he is cunning. This proves it." Kun Wuzi shook his head. If you didn't tell me these, I might have been fooled by him. So, what do you think we should do? Chapter 251. Li Shan thought for a while and smiled. Li Yunxin wants to use Dao Tong and the demons for his own benefit, so why don't we go with the flow? The Elder Guild wants to kill him, so why don't we capture him? Senior brother, do you remember the order you gave us? It said that Li Yunxin is a dangerous person and we have to kill him on the spot. However, there is one thing that I don't understand and I think you don't understand either. Kun Wuzi frowned. What is it? Li Shan didn't answer him immediately. Instead, he picked up a red flower on a tree branch and sniffed it. This action could be done by a beauty or a genius, but now Li Shan did it. One must know that Li Shan's face was originally quite comical. Now he looked even more comical. However, Kun Wuzi's expression changed slightly, which turned into one of pity. He silently watched as Li Shan sniffed the flower and crushed it into red mud in his hand. He then continued, why did the Elder Council give the order to kill Li Yunxin? In the past, Li Yunxin had the clear jade scroll on him, and we didn't hesitate to use one of our connections in Daotong to kill his parents just to get that scroll. But now we don't even want the scroll and just want to kill him quickly. Senior brother, you should know what kind of existence the elders of the Elders Council are. People like them. Why would they be afraid of a small Li Yunxin? What did he do in Weiqing? Kun Wuzi frowned because of his words. After thinking for a while, he raised his head and said, Senior brother Lin Liangji told me before. He killed someone in Weiqing. That person was a son-in-law of the Yu family. He made the black medicine. As for the black medicine, Senior brother Lin Liangji didn't have any evidence, he just guessed that Li Yunxin passed it to him. Now that I think about it, it should be one of Li Yunxin's hidden chess pieces. He suspected our existence and placed it on the table. In the end we fell into his trap. If there is a reason, it should be because of this. Kun Wuzi thought about it carefully and frowned. But for something like the black medicine, I really don't know why the elders would place such importance on it. Similarly, the Pill Cauldron sect of the Prime Clear lineage also has a similar dermic formulation. It's called gunpowder. It's made into pellets and supplemented with spiritual qi to injure people. In reality, its power isn't that great. Li Shan nodded. I'm also puzzled. However, there was still a difference between the two of them. Senior martial brother, think about it. Daotong's Heavenly Heart technique is a secret technique that cannot be passed down. It had been a few thousand years, but who had ever heard of a rogue Taoist learning that technique? The methods of the Pill Cauldron sect of the Prime Clear lineage should have been passed down in the Pill Cauldron sect for generations, like an ancestral memorial tablet, not daring to change it easily. However, when Li Yunxin taught the black medicine technique to the Yu clan's son-in-law, it might have spread among the common people. Li Shan looked at Kun Wuzi. This is probably the difference. But even though this was the difference, I still didn't understand the deeper meaning behind it. The elders possessed remarkable abilities, so why would they be afraid of this? So, I wanted to capture Li Yunxin alive and interrogate him about the crux of the matter. Kun Wuzi was slightly stunned. Then he frowned and shouted at him in a deep voice, Junior martial brother, are you crazy? Do you want to disobey the elders' decree? Li Shan was silent for a while, then a smile appeared on his face. It's like this, senior martial brother. I want to disobey the elders' decree. But who knows? Now, senior martial brother, you know. But if you don't say it, we'll capture Li Yunxin, interrogate him about the things we want to know, then kill him. The elders won't know. Could it be that senior martial brother won't keep the secret for me? Kun Wuzi was stunned by his question again. After a long time he said in a low voice, This isn't my problem. Junior martial brother, why are you doing this? You know how the elders look when they're angry. Li Shan maintained the smile on his face and stared at Kun Wuzi for a while. Then his smile slowly disappeared. He clasped his hands behind his back and paced a few steps on the grass in the forest. Then he turned around and said, Why? Senior martial brother, have you been living well for the past few decades and forgotten about the past? Kun Wuzi was stunned and didn't speak. Li Shan walked towards him expressionlessly. Finally he stood face to face with Kun Wuzi. Their chests were pressed together. They were so close that they could feel each other's breath coming out of their noses and mouths. Kun Wuzi was in a stalemate with him for a while. He turned his face slightly, intending to avoid it. However, Li Shan raised his hands and held onto Kun Wuzi's face, not letting him turn his head. If others were to see this scene, it would be hard to describe. A Taoist in his 50s was cupped by a funny-looking water monster. They really didn't know how to describe it. Kun Wuzi frowned. However, he seemed to feel that such an expression wasn't appropriate and relaxed his brows. However, he still didn't know how to face Li Shan. He could only say, "Junior Marshal brother. What are you doing? What are you doing? Someone found out? How would anyone find out here?" Li Shan stared at Kun Wuzi's face expressionlessly. "Even this won't happen." After saying that, he used the wide and big mouth on his face to kiss Kun Wuzi's mouth. At this moment, Kun Wuzi finally couldn't take it anymore. He pushed Li Shan away and said anxiously and angrily, "Junior Marshal brother." His body was even stronger than the body of a cultivator who had reached the peak of the mystical realm. It was also newly obtained and he couldn't control it as he wished. Thus, he used 20% of his strength in a moment of desperation. This eel demon was only at the peak of the transcendent realm. How could he withstand such strength? He was immediately pushed a dozen steps away and crashed into a huge tree behind him. The tree that needed 3 people to wrap their arms around shook from the impact and a large amount of leaves fell down. Li Shan spat out a mouthful of blood. He had actually been seriously injured by Kun Wuzi. Only then did Kun Wuzi realize that something was wrong. He screamed and quickly rushed over to check on Li Shan's injuries. However, he heard Li Shan scream, "Don't come over." The leader of the Langya Heavenly Cave obediently stopped 3 to 4 steps away from Li Shan and didn't move forward anymore. However, looking at him now, he didn't even have the demeanor of a leader. He stood there with his hands and feet trembling like a student who had done something wrong. He only knew how to say with a trembling voice, "Junior Marshal brother? Junior Marshal brother." "I didn't mean it." Li Shan spat out another mouthful of blood. He actually leaned against the tree and sat down. He sneered, "Now do you know why?" Then he screamed again, "Look at what I look like now. Do you still remember what I looked like in the past? Do you still remember whether I was a man or a woman?" When these 3 sentences came out, Kun Wuzi's face became even paler. "I wanted to kiss you just now and you also felt disgusted." Li Shan laughed crazily. "Didn't you like this the most in the past? At that time, I was Yu Chanzi of the Soaring Heaven Sword sect and you were my senior martial brother. You said that my beauty was unparalleled in the world. You said that you wanted to be with me forever. What about in the past? Do you still remember in the past? I was originally from the Qin nation and was born a woman. It was you who saw me, liked me and brought me to the Freemasonry. Until now, senior martial brother, do you still remember what I looked like at that time? Don't you?" Li Shan stood up with the support of the tree. "You only remember that I'm Tan Liangzhu. What did you see me say just now? Haven't seen you for many years? You almost forgot my Taoist name? What about the words you said in the past? You had a great life in the Langya Grotto heaven and fell in love with that Ling Kongzi? Ha, you actually forgot my Taoist name?" He wanted to continue but he spat out another mouthful of blood and stopped talking. Kun Wuzi's face became more and more bitter. After a long silence, his eyes actually became wet. He only said sorrowfully, "Junior Marshal brother? Junior Marshal brother. It's all my fault. But let me treat your injuries first and then we can talk about it slowly, okay?" Li Shan stared at him for a long time before his face slowly softened and he sighed. "Okay." Kun Wuzi hurriedly ran over and circulated his spiritual qi to protect his heart meridians. The 2 of them were speechless for a while, only watching the fiery red setting sun slowly set over the mountaintop. After half an hour, Li Shankai sighed again and said, "Sai, it's not a big deal. Sai, senior martial brother, this is why. I don't really care about those things in the past. It's just that I'm not resigned to it. You brought me into the Freemasonry and I gained cultivation. Then I was given a Taoist name and became like this. We both gave up our bodies and became wandering souls. And then we pretended to be one person after another. Who we were, where we were, who we were, and what we did with our identities, none of these are things that you and I can decide. I've already been 9 people. As each person, I've lived for decades or even centuries. Senior martial brother, do you know that sometimes I even forget myself? I'm asking you if you remember me. You probably don't remember what I looked like when I was a woman from the Qin nation, Qinli, do you know? I don't remember myself either. All these years, I've even forgotten that I'm a woman. Only when I see you do I remember the past." Li Shan's voice slowly turned bitter. "So I want to know why. The elders always say that the great calamity is coming and that we're going to build a paradise. But these words have been said for hundreds and thousands of years. When exactly will it come? Humans? What is a human? What is a human? Sometimes I think that the reason why I'm me is because someone remembers me and knows me. I also remember myself. I know my own experiences, memories, and feelings. But do we really have these things? Right now, I have the memories of when I was a disciple of the Soaring Heaven Sword sect, Yuchanzi. But now I'm the lake demon Li Shan. Then who am I? Which one is me? Li Shan sighed. You see, even you can't bear my current appearance. And I'm a woman? Don't tell me I can endure it? At this point, his emotions finally calmed down, but he began to sob softly. A woman sobbing, looking delicate and pitiful. But now that he was an eel demon, he really couldn't be compared to the word delicate and pitiful. Seeing him like this, Kun Wuzi subconsciously frowned again. But soon, he relaxed his frown, turned his head slightly, and hugged Chu Yang lightly. Good. Junior Marshal brother, I'll listen to you. Whatever you say, we'll do it. At most, I won't be Kun Wuzi anymore. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility. After a while, Li Shan didn't say anything. At this time, the sky had already darkened. The forest was pitch black and there were sounds of insects. This darkness made Kun Wuzi feel more at ease. At least, he couldn't see the appearance of the person in his arms clearly. He could only think about the past, and his heart felt much more comfortable and soft. Then Li Shan pushed him away and stood up. Senior Marshal brother, so I want to know what the elders are afraid of. We've worked for them for so long, but they only gave us a promise that we don't know when it will be fulfilled. This promise was also vague and unclear. So, I'm not afraid of working long and hard. I'm afraid that I'll be happy for nothing. Li Shan's voice gradually became firm. If I can't always be myself, then at least I need to know what my goal is. Kun Wuzi was silent for a long time in the darkness. Then he sighed. All right. I know that you've suffered these years. But, Senior Marshal brother Lin Liangzi sighed. We can't let him know. Li Shan's voice became serious. We don't know what he's thinking, so we can't take any risks. But he told me previously that he wanted to capture Li Yunxin. Moreover, he was the one who killed the Yu family, so he knows more about the whole matter than we do. Li Shan thought for a while and said, we still can't. But we can do this. We don't know what Lin Liangzi knows, so it's not good to ask him. In that case, we'll ask him to tell Li Yunxin. I have a plan. We can ask Li Yunxin to capture Lin Liangzi and ask him for information. Then we can capture Li Yunxin. Isn't that killing two birds with one stone? Kun Wuzi was silent for a while as if he was making a decision. Then he said, okay. Li Shan was happy. Then let's do this. Li Yunxin wants to pretend to join Daotong, so we'll cater to his interests. But he wants us to get rid of those big demons for him, but we don't follow his way. We can't let him take advantage of us. When he comes to Daotong, he won't know that we're on the same side. At that time, he will be in the light and we will be in the dark. We can set a few big magic circles and he will be trapped. He can't escape. Then let's capture him, interrogate him carefully, and then make a plan, okay? Kun Wuzi was silent for a while and said, okay. Li Shan didn't speak. After a few seconds, he asked in the darkness, judging from your voice, you still have something on your mind. Tell me, senior brother. Let me see if I can help. Kun Wuzi was silent for a longer time this time. Then he said, that Ling Kongzi is still in Dongting, right? The insects in the grass near them chirped for a while before they heard Li Shan's voice. Oh, about that. A small beast passed through the grass. The insects were scared and stopped chirping. After a while they tried to make a low hiss again and then it became louder. Li Shan said again, okay. I'll help you keep an eye on her, to see if I can protect her. Kun Wuzi gritted his teeth. Thank you. Don't mention it. It's getting late. Li Shan walked a few steps away from Kun Wuzi. Senior apprentice, please go back. His tone gradually calmed down. Don't make people in Daotong suspicious. We still have important things to do. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.